Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
Jujutsu Kaisen. God's Blessing on a Cursed World. Part 1. Tokyo, Jujutsu High, afternoon. The sound of cicadas clamored through the dense forest, yet in this silent air, there permeated a sense of oppression sufficient to make any jujutsu sorcerer break out in a cold sweat. It was the embodiment of humanity's deepest fears. However, in such an environment, Mizuki Makoto was hiding around the corner of the old school building, his expression solemn, his fingertips sliding rapidly across a tablet. The tone of the pupils needs to be colder. Yes, just like the frozen lake Baikal, that azure blue capable of sucking in a person's soul is the essence. The cinnabar mole on the forehead needs to be rounder. This collision of divinity and fallen heaven is true art. Mizuki Makoto muttered to himself, his gaze so fiery it seemed as if he wanted to burn through the screen. On the screen, a woman with hair as white as snow and eyes like azure sapphires stood leaning slightly. She wore Gojo Satoru's signature arrogant smile, but was dressed in an extremely daringly cut nun's habit. She bowed slightly, making a one-handed salute gesture that carried a strong sense of provocation. That black-veiled shrine maiden outfit, originally symbolizing holiness, had been mischievously altered by Mizuki Makoto with a deep V-neck and high-slit design, generously revealing delicate collarbones, proud curves, and a pair of long, impossibly beautiful legs wrapped in translucent white silk. The finishing touch was the vermilion dot on her forehead, which, amidst the cold tones of azure and snow white, abruptly sparked a hint of charm and danger. This was a masterpiece that perfectly fused divinity and allure. The arrogant and composed smile at the corner of her lips seemed to mock. Even if I dress like this, there is still no one in this world who can touch a single hair on my head. This was Mizuki Makoto's magnum opus Gojo Mai, Saint Chapter. Perfect. Mizuki Makoto closed the tablet with satisfaction and let out a long sigh. Just then, a ghostly voice sounded from behind his ear without warning. Oh my, Makoto-kun, although I know I'm handsome, drawing me as this, Oni-san. And isn't the fabric of this outfit a bit too sparing? Every hair on Mizuki Makoto's body stood on end instantly. No need to turn around. That sweet-scented, abyss-like cursed energy fluctuation, which was impossible to look directly at, was something only one person in all of Japan possessed. He turned around stiffly, seeing the long-legged man wearing a blindfold and a black Jujutsu high uniform squatting on the wall, holding a bag of freshly bought kikufuku, looking down at him with great interest. Gojo. Teacher. Mizuki Makoto's mouth twitched, and he tried to inconspicuously shove the tablet behind his back. Don't hide it, the six eyes can see more than you imagine. Gojo Satoru teleported in front of him, reached out to take the tablet with extreme naturalness, and pulled down a corner of his blindfold. Those eyes, capable of seeing through all things, reflected the image of Gojo Mai. The air seemed to solidify at this moment. Mizuki Makoto was already calculating how long it would take to dig a hole in the back of Jujutsu High to bury himself. Makoto-kun. Gojo Satoru suddenly put away his smile, his tone becoming somewhat low. Mizuki Makoto's heart sank. Teacher, I can explain, this is actually a form of performance art. No. Gojo Satoru raised his head, a dangerous and excited glint flashing in his azure eyes. I wanted to ask, why didn't this version of me bring my favorite limited edition Daifuku? As an Oni-san, shouldn't there be this kind of contrast mo setting? And the thickness you designed for this, Miss Mai, it should be 30D. Oh my, if Shoko saw this, she would be very jealous, right tilde and that one-handed salute gesture, are you imitating the way I looked while working yesterday? Mizuki Makoto. Huh. Also, this waistline, if you could raise it by 2 centimeters, that sense of divinity would be even stronger. Makoto-kun, your drawing skills are good, but your understanding of the strongest is still shallow. This look is arrogant enough, but it feels like it lacks that heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one, spirit. Gojo Satoru pointed at the drawing, spouting nonsense with a straight face, and you need to draw that kind of, even if I accidentally get cut in half someday in the future, I would still praise the opponent for being strong in my dying moments and blame myself for not letting them have a good time. That kind of open-mindedness. Mizuki Makoto was flustered. Teacher, it's probably better not to randomly set up such inexplicable defeat flags, right? This teacher of his brain circuits must have been fried by limitless. Teacher, the point isn't the daifuku, the point is that I'm drawing you gender bent. Mizuki Makoto couldn't help but retort, shouldn't you lock me in solitary confinement, or blast me into a shooting star on the horizon using hollow purple? Gojo Satoru tossed the tablet back to him, put his blindfold back on, and a playful arc tugged at the corner of his lips. Why be angry? It's quite interesting. He patted Mizuki Makoto's shoulder with enough force to nearly send the protagonist to heaven on the spot. Compared to the boring rumors made up by those rotten oranges, higher ups, I prefer this a sincere creation of Makoto-kun's. However, Gojo Satoru's figure began to blur in the air. It was the prelude to teleportation. Since you used my face as material, teacher will be looking forward to tomorrow's promotion test. If you lose, I'll print this image out and post it on the bulletin board at the school gate. Signed, Mizuki Makoto's fetish revealed. You're the real devil. Gojo-sensei. Watching Gojo Satoru's disappearing back, Mizuki Makoto suddenly seemed to remember something, jumped up, and shouted at the empty air while waving his fists. Also, teacher. This is naked slander. It's rumor mongering. It's a devastating blow to the reputation of an upright high school student. Gojo Satoru's figure paused in the void, tilting his head, seemingly very interested in hearing the final defense of this little monkey. Oh, where is it a rumor? My fetish is clearly mature and elegant big sisters like Mei Mei. Mizuki Makoto looked righteous, hands on his hips, his voice loud enough to startle the cicadas in the trees. White-haired immature brats like you, teacher, who have nothing but looks and strength, have a personality so bad it makes the jujutsu world collectively lose sleep, and even go as far as stealing children's kikufuku, or simply not within my hunting range. Mizuki Makoto looked righteous. Do you know what people say about you outside? A long-haired white cat that is perfect in every way except for its personality. Who would want to date a cat that only tears up the house every day and steals students' sweets? Please do not use your cheap imagination to speculate on my noble aesthetic. The air was dead silent for 3 seconds. Gojo Satoru, who had already been preparing to teleport away, had his eye twitch visibly. He pulled down his blindfold, his Azure Six eyes re-examining this audacious student, seemingly trying to confirm if this guy's brain had been kicked by a cursed spirit. That woman Mei Mei who is obsessed with money. Gojo Satoru put his blindfold back on and let out a chuckle that sounded profound. Makoto-kun, your taste is really, unexpectedly, expensive, and dangerous. I will relay this to her exactly as is, and by the way, ask her if she's willing to pay a reputation damage fee for that drawing. Hey, that is absolutely unnecessary, teacher. Whoosh. Gojo Satoru disappeared completely. Mizuki Makoto collapsed against the wall, exhausted, and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Only after making sure that the oppressive cursed energy had completely faded did he let out a long sigh, his initially terrified expression instantly switching back to that sinister, plan-succeeding smile. The higher-ups, that group of rotten oranges, could never dream of what kind of unholy thing the student they recorded in their files as only having ornamental value, actually was. Tokyo Jujutsu High Student Personal File. Name: Mizuki Makoto. Enrollment year: 2017. Grade: Grade 3 Sorcerer Provisional. Innate Technique: Echo Mimicry. Technique Description: capable of replicating others' techniques for a short time through visual capture and cursed energy perception. Evaluation and flaws: due to extremely poor technique compatibility, the power of replicated moves is usually only 1%, 50% of the original, and the appearance manifests as unstable blue noise, evaluated as a shoddy homage with only ornamental value. The individual is extremely dissatisfied with this evaluation, claiming that the upper limit of the technique's strength depends on the spiritual resonance, with the target being mimicked. A shoddy homage with only ornamental value. Hey, this evaluation is truly so gentle it makes one want to cry. Mizuki Makoto mocked himself in a low voice, his fingertips gently rubbing the edge of the tablet. His innate technique was a taboo sufficient to cause the higher-ups of the jujutsu world to collectively have a heart attack. Its name, limitless cognitive parasite. Unlike the elegant and divine bloodline talent passed down for thousands of years in the Gojo family, Mizuki Makoto's limitless was, in essence, a plunder of cognition. This name did not refer to space, but to the condition for achieving technique feedback, having absolutely no moral bottom line. As long as the rumors fabricated by Mizuki Makoto caused a cognitive bias in the audience, he could share power from the target. And the strength of the feedback strictly followed three nearly perverted variables. 1. Fact deviation. The greater the deviation between the lie and the truth, the stronger the feedback. For example, spreading a rumor that Gojo Satoru is gay yields 100 times more profit than spreading one that he loves salty tofu pudding. 2. Target strength. The higher the cursed energy level of the target being rumored about, the higher the shared power limit. 3. Social consensus. The more people who believe the rumor and the deeper they believe it, the closer the shared power becomes to the truth. Simply put, if the rumors created by Mizuki Makoto were further from the truth and received higher recognition, for instance, if he could make the entire jujutsu world, including Gojo Satoru himself, believe from the bottom of their hearts that Gojo Satoru was actually Mizuki Makoto's biological son, he could mince Sukuna into bits on the spot. But currently, he was still at the starting stage of stealing a hook leads to execution. To survive, he had to wrap this vicious technique in a layer of seemingly harmless skin called echo-mimicry. This tightrope walking behavior was even more thrilling than playing What a Good Day, when Geto Suguru died in front of Gojo Satoru. No choice, who told him that the technique he got wasn't from a hot-blooded shonen manga, but rather, on the matter of me becoming the strongest by spreading rumors. Although Gojo Satoru was laughing happily now, if one day he discovered what I had done and what I intended to do, he would probably really perform a domain expansion on me in the physical sense and physically send me to the afterlife. At the very moment Gojo Satoru completed his recognition, the technique within Mizuki Makoto erupted with an unprecedentedly greedy suction. Technique judgment, formula logic. Deviation. Gender bending the strongest male in the world into judgment. Extreme. Target strength. Special grade sorcerer, Gojo Satoru. Judgment. Highest level. Consensus. The concerned party, Gojo Satoru himself, had a misjudgment of, this kid draws really well, captures details accurately. Judgment. Extremely slight. Tisk. Maybe next time I'll draw an oh-ho-ho Miss Gojomai or Miss Gojomai instead. On the outskirts of Tokyo, an abandoned sanitarium. The moss-covered corridors were filled with a smell of decay. Makoto-kun, although you are the type who has a talent for everything except doing actual work, if you fail the grade 2 promotion test, I, your teacher, will print out your entire web browsing history from the past month, word for word, and post it on the bulletin board in the school cafeteria. Gojo Satoru left behind this threat, which was enough to make any decent young man commit suicide on the spot, and then, carrying the kikufuku he had just bought, he leisurely disappeared outside the barrier, the curtain. Hey, that's an invasion of personal privacy. That's blatant workplace bullying, Gojo-sensei. Mizuki Makoto let out a desperate cry at the pitch-black curtain. Thinking of those search materials regarding succubus Gojo Mai, as well as the various antisocial obscure knowledge he had looked up to become stronger, if they were really pinned to the bulletin board. That kind of thing, absolutely not. Is my innocence going to end before it has even begun? He wiped the cold sweat from his face and looked around. According to Jujutsu High's pre-battle assessment, The upper limit for the cursed spirit level here was only grade 2. And the condition for lifting this curtain was unusually straightforward. Automatically lifts when no cursed spirits remain inside. 3 minutes later, with a dull explosion, the mission target, that grade 2 cursed spirit resembling a giant centipede, was blasted into fragments by a crooked punch of blue. Phew, job done. Mizuki Makoto clapped his hands and was just about to turn and leave, but his smile suddenly froze on his face. The curtain, overhead, black as tar, remained motionless. Hey, Gojo-sensei. This kind of prank isn't funny at all. Mizuki Makoto's heart began to race. The barrier had not lifted, which meant there were still cursed spirits here. And Jujutsu High's intelligence system would never make a mistake on such a trivial matter as a grade 2 test. Unless a malice from the outside world had intruded here, one that even Gojo Satoru's 6 eyes had not noticed. Special grade. Wah, what does this mean? Am I fighting a special grade cursed spirit? Me. When that twisted, nauseatingly fragrant stitched monster stepped out from the remains of the grade 2 cursed spirit, Mizuki Makoto's knees instantly began to buckle. Gojo Satoru. You white-haired cat. Are those 6 eyes of yours worth billions just used as light bulbs? He roared in his heart, nearly breaking down. You didn't even notice this kind of out-of-spec monster falling into the barrier. If you want to kill me, just say so, you don't need to stage this kind of accident, hey. The sharp claws had already arrived. As someone useless at taijutsu, Mizuki Makoto couldn't rely on his physical body or limitless to dodge like Gojo Satoru. He could only condense that less than 1% of Gojo Satoru's power onto his body surface. Thud. The first strike was blocked by limitless. But Mizuki Makoto's face instantly turned pale. No. The consumption for this kind of defense is astronomical. Against a monster of this level, I'll be turned into meat paste by the second punch. He tried to counterattack, but at this moment, he couldn't project blue remotely at all. That mass of gravity was like a 10,000 jin magnet, stuck firmly to his fist, making every punch feel like he was fighting against the rotation of the entire planet. A punch augmented with blue won't kill this thing either, unless he couldn't run, he couldn't win. In this black box where electronic signals were cut off and Gojo Satoru was blocked outside, the touch of death was so real it made him want to vomit. If he were any other grade 3 sorcerer. As a transmigrator, as a fraudster, and a rumor monger, in order to avoid being beaten to death by victims one day because his lies were exposed, he had long since preset a final self-rescue program. Clang, clang, clang. The rusty industrial water pump was clashing wildly under the interference of cursed energy, the heavy metal roar almost shattering Mizuki Makoto's eardrums. He leaned back against the vibrating water pump, watching that staggering yet overwhelmingly oppressive stitched monster, and flashed a manic and twisted smile at the eyeball in the shadow of the corridor pillar that held a surveillance intent. Question. Why did Mizuki Makoto publicly declare his cursed technique to be echo mimicry? There were 2 reasons. The most important one, naturally, was to cover up the truth of Limitless and avoid being humanely destroyed by furious victims. And the other reason was precisely to deal with this deadlock. The echo mimicry cursed technique itself was also a rumor, and a lie that had deceived the entire Jujutsu world and even Gojo Satoru, the strongest. And under the rules of Limitless, an absolute lie would become an absolute truth. Cursed technique reveal. My cursed technique, its name is Limitless. Its core is making the fake into reality. Cursed technique reveal. Binding vow achieved. Limitless efficiency, 120%. Echo mimicry, use possible. In this instant, the lie was given a soul. To pair with Gojo Sensei's limitless power, there were 2 most suitable mimicry choices for me. Should I use Star Rage, which was the most compatible with blue, and could kill it in one hit? No, I couldn't be like that white-haired guy and blast blue out. In this situation, given my current abilities, if I loaded both blue and Star Rage onto my fist at the same time, it would be uncontrollable, and I would get sucked in and shredded myself. In that case, there was only that one. Mizuru Takako, if I can survive this time, I will repay you in the future and have that guy Okatsu return your arm. Echo Mimicry, Cursed Technique. Ashura Dan. The moment the special grade cursed spirit smashed through the iron door, Mizuki Makoto did not retreat. Instead, he raised his hand to meet the opponent's fist in a pose that was utterly unimaginable, extremely strange, and twisted. He abruptly stopped his forward momentum, his feet dug firmly into the ground, his entire body arched extremely backward like a metal plate forcibly bent by two giant hands. Under the heavy pressure, his spine emitted a screeching sound of unbearable friction, as if it would snap the next second. He extended his right hand into the air, not to attack, but to precisely grab a piece of the atmosphere in front of him. And his left arm, which was stuck with blue, was stiffly placed flat in front of his chest, pointing straight at the cursed spirit's glabella. Cursed technique stitching. Loading. Utilizing the characteristics of Ashura Dan, materialize space to create a directional bow of space. Operation. Utilize the curved surface extension of Ashura Dan to create a directional guide rail. This is Blue Echo. Mizuki Makoto clenched his left fist, and a blue light that was extremely unstable and even backlashing against his skin flickered on his fist. That was blue, which couldn't leave his hand. The moment the bow of space, pulled back by his right hand, reached its critical point, he used the elasticity of space to shoot his entire left arm, along with that devastating mass of gravity, out like a cannonball. Boom. The price arrived in an instant. At this moment, he had no technique to control blue leaving his body. The instant the gravity was violently dragged away by the spatial guide rail, the flesh and blood of his entire left forearm were instantly stripped and shredded by the gravitational wave, sucked into that mass of blue light. White bones were exposed, and blood sprayed wildly. The intense nerve pain pierced through Mizuki Makoto's consciousness like high-voltage electricity in an instant. Boom. That inferior blue, mixed with flesh and blood residue, produced an incomprehensible spatial collapse effect after being accelerated by the spatial guide rail. The blue, which was originally just an inferior version, produced a spatial collapse effect similar to a supersonic shockwave after being accelerated and amplified by the spatial guide rail. The special grade cursed spirit's tough torso, the moment it touched this layer of overlapping space, was forcibly crushed into atomic level dust because the pressure skyrocketed tens of thousands of times in an instant. Space was like a torn oil painting, leaving several terrifying pitch-black cracks in the pump room. The terrifying directional gravity did not lose its momentum after shredding the cursed spirit, and with a piercing sound of space tearing, it slammed heavily against the inner wall of the curtain. Crack. That barrier, which had been set up by the assistant supervisor and should have been indestructible, shattered from the inside like fragile glass under this blow. Mizuki Makoto looked at the dissipating black fragments overhead and the figure belonging to that white-haired man revealed in the sky. Only one thought remained in his mind. White-haired cat, this time you have to give me triple the work-related injury compensation. Gojo Satoru was originally sitting on a signal tower in the distance eating kikufuku, his pale blue, 6 eyes, pupils constricted sharply, staring fixedly at the gap that had been violently smashed open by an external force. He crossed space the moment the barrier collapsed and landed in the center of the ruins. That is, pulling down his blindfold, the pale blue 6 eyes captured the details in the wreckage in an instant. He extended his finger and pinched a tiny, stitching thread, in the air that carried the aura of cursed spirit manipulation. Ghetto, so that's how it was. Gojo Satoru's tone dropped to freezing point. He understood instantly. This was using cursed spirit manipulation to forcibly stitch a high-grade cursed womb into a low-grade cursed spirit, using the overlap of 2 layers of cursed energy information to cover up the real aura, which was how it had perfectly deceived his 6 eyes. Subsequently, Gojo Satoru looked at Mizuki Makoto, who had fallen in a pool of blood. The boy had already completely lost consciousness due to the excruciating pain. His left hand, which exposed white bones, was too horrible to look at, and there were traces of spatial overlapping echoes in the air that were extremely inefficient yet strangely fused. This unreasonable spatial thickness. Gojo Satoru pulled down his blindfold, looking at the trajectory of the spatial guide rail, remaining in the air, which looked as if it had been violently rubbed. He squatted in front of the ruins, looking at Mizuki Makoto, who had passed out with his right arm torn and bleeding due to enduring immense pressure. Strange operation path. Gojo Satoru quickly understood in his heart. Because the precision of his cursed energy manipulation is too low, he can't project it remotely as accurately as I can. So, in order to survive, did he have to use that crude technique of grabbing space, treating his own body as a launcher, and forcibly ejecting blue. Even the barrier was shattered because of this inefficient and heavy, violent stacking. What a crazy and clumsy student. Since you've risked your life to this extent. Gojo Satoru picked up the boy, looked at the face as pale as paper, and sighed helplessly. Then I'll let you off for now regarding the BGMI R18 book, and the browsing history matter. Teacher Shoko. Help me. I'm dying, I'm really going to die. Tokyo Jujutsu High Infirmary. The air, which should have been quiet and solemn, was completely shattered by a shrill and piercing wail. Mizuki Makoto, the grade 3 Jujutsu sorcerer, who had smashed a barrier with his bare white-boned right arm just half an hour ago, was now wrapped from head to toe in thick bandages, looking exactly like a freshly unearthed mummy. But this mummy lacked the serenity of the dead. Instead, it was clinging to Shoko Ieri's thigh in an incredibly bizarre posture, like a giant, wriggling maggot. Wah! Sister Shoko, look at my hand. The flesh is gone. There's only bone left. Will I not even have the strength to hold chopsticks to eat instant noodles anymore? Am I going to become a cripple who can only rely on a ventilator to stay alive? Mizuki Makoto wailed loudly while desperately rubbing his bandaged face against the hem of Shoko's lab coat. If one ignored the clear, mercenary look deep in his eyes, this display of playing the victim could truly be called tearful. Let go. Shoko Ieri sat in a swivel chair, a cigarette that wasn't lit dangling from her mouth, her dark circles twice as deep as usual. She lowered her eyes, looking at the creature, acting cute maliciously, at her feet, her gaze full of the exhaustion that screamed, why didn't I just let Gojo bury you back then? I won't let go. Unless you promise to give me 6 months of paid sick leave. And high-grade nutritional subsidies. The residual cursed energy from that special grade cursed womb must still be damaging my brain cells. Teacher, look, have my eyes become clearer, stupider? Mizuki Makoto looked up, trying hard to widen his eyes that were filled with, please support me, attempting to launch an attack called Weakling's Coquetry. Mizuki Makoto, let me remind you. Shoko Ieri expressionlessly extended 2 fingers, precisely pinching Mizuki Makoto's ear and yanking it upward. Your hand has already been completely regenerated using reverse curse technique. As for the brain cell damage you mentioned, according to my diagnosis, that's likely your innate intellectual defect. Reverse curse technique can't cure stupidity. Ouch, 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 ouch. It's going to break. My ear is going to fall off. Mizuki Makoto let out a pig-like shriek, but his grip on her thigh actually tightened. Sister Shoko. Lady Shoko. Your gentle fingers are truly a miracle. As long as you say the word, even if you make me wash Teacher Gojo's underwear, I'll accept it. No, forget washing his underwear, that's too anti-human. Let's just change it to triple the compensation instead. That scumbag was right. Shoko Ieri sighed, finally giving up the struggle and letting this maggot hang onto her leg. You guy, you really have zero class as a jujutsu sorcerer. Honestly, when I saw your arm with the exposed bone, I thought you were finally no longer scumbag number 3, but it turns out. Can class be exchanged for triple the salary? Can it be exchanged for a tablet membership? Mizuki Makoto sniffled, making a loud nasal sound. I was injured this badly to protect Tokyo Jujutsu High's important property, which is me. That stitch-faced monster was super fierce. Alright, stop acting. Shoko Ieri rubbed her temples hard and slapped a report onto Mizuki Makoto's bandaged head. Gojo has already investigated the matter clearly. It was Geto, the curse user Suguru Geto's doing. Hearing the name, Suguru Geto, Mizuki Makoto's wriggling movement paused imperceptibly for 0.1 seconds, then he cried even louder. Teacher, this was done by Suguru Geto. It was a trap personally set by teacher Gojo's, one of two best friends. If it wasn't to deal with the special grade cursed womb he left behind, would I have ended up in this, bone-exposed, state? As he spoke, he climbed up the pole, tightening his grip on her thigh, his tone humble yet carrying a hint of a threat that revealed his true intentions. When I first revealed my cursed technique Limitless to you, you were still skeptical of me. But now, I've paid a blood tax for that youth of yours. Teacher Shoko, can you bear to watch a child who was disabled for justice and money wither away in the pain of lacking material? Can you bear to let that fool Suguru Geto giggle in the shadows while I can't even get the material to write a novel to smear him? Shoko Ieri's hand holding the cigarette trembled slightly. She looked down at the bottomless youth at her feet. In normal times, she would only think this guy was just like those two scumbags, a hopeless piece of social trash. But just a moment ago, when she'd personally stitched up Mizuki Makoto's wounds, in that residual fluctuation of cursed energy, she had indeed felt a kind of nostalgic stubbornness. Geto, you scumbag, you have already. Alright, stop acting, your tears are rubbing off on my socks. Shoko sighed heavily, finally giving up on the plan to kick this maggot away. She recalled the proposal Mizuki Makoto had made a week ago, that wicked plan about using rumors to deconstruct the strongest. Let go, and go pour me a cup of coffee. Add 2 sugar cubes. If it isn't stirred well, you can just go lie in the incinerator yourself. Alright. Editor-in-Chief, sit tight. Mizuki Makoto flipped up nimbly. Where was the decadent look of that wriggling maggot from just now? Although he was still wrapped in bandages, he was as agile as a monkey that had just stolen a banana. Boiling water, grinding beans, lighting a cigarette, kneading shoulders, a set of 5-star exploitation service processes flowed smoothly, striving to let Shoko regain the queen-like feeling of being pampered by Nanami and Haibara back at Tokyo Jujutsu High. Under the cover of that servile appearance, Mizuki Makoto was calculating rapidly in his heart. This was so that his limitless cursed technique could truly be utilized, no longer just pure delusions like drawing some doujinshi. Instead, it was about weaving rumors through real material, thereby misleading public perception, and using the curse of lies to steal real power. Makoto-kun, I don't want to see you write that memory into pure trash. Shoko narrowed her eyes, enjoying the pressure on her shoulders. The manuscript must be reviewed by me first, this is our binding vow. If you dare to be perfunctory, the backlash of the binding vow will ensure you can't even draw stick figures for the rest of your life. Rest assured, Teacher Shoko. Mizuki Makoto leaned close to her ear, his eyes shining like a conspirator. This time, I don't intend to draw doujinshi. I'm going to write a novel. I want to use the most delicate writing to knead those real details into the most absurd sad romance. I've already thought of the name, it's called Bitter Summer. Text. This was the medium he had carefully chosen. In this prejudiced jujutsu world, no one would think that a teenager whose head was full of white-stocking shrine maidens all day and whose aesthetic was extremely upright was secretly a knife-wielding spirit, capable of writing delicate male sad romance. To maximize the feedback of his cursed technique, he had to endure the churning nausea in his stomach and crawl all night into those weirdly styled women-oriented websites. In those quagmires filled with pink bubbles and indescribable text, he had forcibly honed a skill for writing male romance literature that was delicate in touch, twisted in emotion, and would make even professional fujoshi blush. With this cognitive blind spot, even if Satoru Gojo discovered it one day, he would first suspect that Shoko Ieri had finally been crushed by her shitty life and developed a creative habit. That day, the popsicle ghetto went to buy. Shoko Ieri spoke slowly amidst the steam of the coffee. Since the price had already been paid with Mizuki Makoto's flesh and blood, she no longer hesitated, her voice carrying a hint of morbid nostalgia that even she hadn't noticed. As a result, that guy Gojo snatched the biggest part and deliberately dripped the melted sugar water onto Geto's collar. The look in Geto's eyes at that time wasn't anger, but a kind of extremely helpless indulgence. He didn't even wipe it off. Instead, he took off Gojo's sunglasses, covered his own eyes with them, and said, "Gojo, you've become weak." Indulgent eyes, sugar water on the collar, swapped sunglasses. Oh ho ho ho. Nice. Mizuki Makoto recorded rapidly on his tablet, his movements so fast they almost created afterimages. Teacher Shoko, more. These details of arsenic hidden in sugar, or what readers love most. When my bitter summer is serialized on the dark web, not only will I be able to absorb power, but perhaps even Suguru Geto, who is hiding in the shadows, will be so angry that his cursed energy becomes disordered due to this kind of social death. Get lost and go right. Shoko Ieri blew out a smoke ring, her eyes drifting slightly. Don't be an eyesore here. Yes, ma'am. I guarantee it will be written even more realistically than the truth. Mizuki Makoto made a cool farewell gesture to Shoko and disappeared at the door of the infirmary. Shoko Ieri watched the empty room, her fingertips rubbing the warm coffee. Making the fake come true. She whispered softly, editing the story of those two idiots into something like this. Makoto-kun, you really are an out-and-out sinner. Deep night, 2 a.m. sharp. Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High School, boys' dormitory. Who? Mizuki Makoto let out a long breath and locked the door. To prevent Satoru Gojo's unreasonable eyes from suddenly popping out of the ceiling, he casually spread a book titled Secret Records of the White Silk Shrine Maiden on the table, disguising himself as a wholesome teenager, preparing to take off late at night. This is called professional integrity. After all, Satoru Gojo's 6 eyes can see through the flow of cursed energy, but it cannot see through the black heart filled with the desire to deceive that a teenager has honed just to survive. He put on anti-static gloves and took out that old computer modified under Shoko's technical guidance. The signal passed through 7 public jump servers, made a huge loop through Tokyo, Osaka, London, New York, and Shanghai, and finally landed precisely on the base station of the administration building of Kyoto Jujutsu High. Logically speaking, someone who had just had their parts dismantled by a special grade cursed spirit during the day and was recovering from serious injuries should have fallen asleep immediately, but Mizuki Makoto felt his brain was unprecedentedly clear at this moment. Sure enough, people don't get tired when doing bad things. This kind of immoral pleasure is more effective than any stimulant. Mizuki Makoto's fingertips tapped out afterimages on the keyboard, the crisp tapping sound like a series of dense spell-casting incantations. So-called lies are essentially a type of curse. They are born from suspicion, misunderstanding, and bad taste between people. And he is the only person in this world who can drink deeply from this absurd curse. As long as the lies he concocts are fragrant enough, the truth of the whole world will obediently get drunk. Real details are the skeleton, outrageous emotions are the skin and flesh. Hey, Gojo-sensei, are you ready for asocial death, in the minds of all jujutsu sorcerers in Japan? He hit the enter key heavily. Pen name. When Rain Falls in Kyoto. Book title. Bitter Summer. Through 7 layers of physical proxies, the signal circled the world and finally landed precisely on the servers of those conservative old geezers at Kyoto Jujutsu High. For my safety, Kyoto Jujutsu High, please be sure to take the blame for this. In this novel, Mizuki Makoto threw all the fragments provided by Shoko sugar stains on the collar, swapped sunglasses, the sticky cicada chirping in the afternoon into a shredder named Tragic Love. He rewrote that history with a penmanship that was extremely pretentious, extremely depressing, and could even make a dog on the side of the road cry. Satoru Gojo finally realized that Limitless could block all attacks, but it could not block the back of that man leaving. In that drop of sugar water sliding down the collar, he tasted a curse named Best Friend. Ah. After writing this, Mizuki Makoto dry heaved into the trash can first. Does anyone really believe this kind of strong industrial saccharine taste? If this kind of text is sent out, my bottom line has probably defected along with it. The answer is, everyone is basically just watching the fun, but this fun itself is a subtle and lasting curse. In this oppressive and desperate jujutsu world, this top-secret wild history between the strongest jujutsu sorcerer and the strongest curse user is more exciting than any special grade cursed object. The dark web forum Roppongi I instantly exploded. 1L. Anonymous Jujutsu Sorcerer. Holy crap, the writing style is too ridiculous. Although I don't think a scumbag like Satoru Gojo could be so affectionate, the detail about the popsicle sugar water. I actually worked part-time at that shop, and Jujutsu High students really love going there. 14L. Anonymous Sorcerer. Yar yar, looking at it this way, they were indeed a bit gay back then. I used to think Suguru Geto defected because his brain snapped, but now looking at this novel. Tisk, what's with this feeling of, abandoned by the whole world but only wanting you not to give up on me? 45L. Anonymous Sorcerer. Although it's nonsense, given the personalities of those two scumbags, if it were for this reason, instead, everything makes sense. 77L. Anonymous User. Very sorry for reading this kind of thing during break time. Judging from the details mentioned in the article, the author clearly has a very high understanding of that period. As for the content, although in my opinion, describing that gentleman's relationship is tragic love, is an act of extreme lack of professional integrity, I have to admit, based on my understanding of Mr. Gojo's twisted personality, this irreparable regret caused by self-centeredness is foolable logical. Simply put, looking at it this way, it's not entirely impossible for these two to have issues. Satoru Gojo is just shit, that is all. Mizuki Makoto looked at this comment and almost laughed out loud. This familiar sarcastic taste. Nanami-san, thank you for injecting the most solid cornerstone into my lies on this overtime late night. No one was really brainwashed, but from the moment everyone subconsciously thought, if it's these two rotten people, it doesn't seem entirely impossible, the originally solid truth was cracked by this ambiguous wavering. Cursed technique judgment, formula logic. Entry degree. Vilifying the strongest male in the world as a melancholic, tragic, gay man. Judgment. Great. Target strength. Special grade sorcerer, Satoru Gojo. Judgment. Highest level. Recognition degree. About 500 jujutsu sorcerers and 2,000 assistant supervisors have developed a slight cognitive wavering that it is, logically consistent. Oh ho 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 tilde I'm about to be filled up. Dame yo. Mizuki Makoto straightened his back abruptly and let out a kind of extremely broken, cheap laugh. He felt an extremely cold curse generated in the void. That was cursed energy that did not belong to him. That was the sludge formed by humanity's malicious speculation and pink fantasies about the strongest. The cruel iron law carved into the DNA of the jujutsu world. A sorcerer's amount of cursed energy is destined from birth. That is the class of being born human, the firmament that mortals cannot touch in their entire lives. But at this moment, Mizuki Makoto was elegantly holding a straw named Bitter Summer, drinking wildly from the curse called lies, released by the world itself. This is the way to fight using the curse of lies. It doesn't require everyone to believe it firmly, just that they have the thought that this possibility exists. This collective, twisted view turned into a false power, forcibly filling in Mizuki Makoto's originally unreachable defects. There are no miracles out of thin air in this world, he just refined all the what-ifs, and this is so exciting, in this world into fuel for himself to squander. He felt the viscous and crazy cursed energy in his body that was almost bursting his blood vessels, raised that right hand wrapped in bandages, and made a virtual grip in the dark air. The spatial repulsive force that could crush a beginner was now condensing at his fingertips like a docile kitten. A deep blue sphere, like a miniature black hole, was spinning silently in his palm, pulling and distorting the surrounding light. This is blue. This time, no muscles were torn inch by inch because they couldn't withstand the load, no bones made tooth-aching crisp sounds because of violent backlash, and there was no painful roar that seemed to squeeze the soul dry. Mizuki Makoto looked at the deep blue sphere representing the sealing move of the jujutsu world, feeling the earth-shaking qualitative change in his body, the corners of his mouth hooked into an extremely despicable arc, and he whispered. Can a mere piece of fun let me jump over that death line destined from birth? However, it's still not as good as Nanami during working hours, it's probably at the level of a semi-grade 1 sorcerer, right? He pushed up his glasses, tilted his head at the empty room, and revealed a brilliant, insincere smile. As expected of the strongest, Gojo-sensei. Just the little bit of pink lingering warmth leaked out has benefited me so much. Desuki Deizu, love you. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the convenience store, Satoru Gojo was staring at his phone, the red bean paste raw cream daifuku he hadn't swallowed yet stuck in his throat. As the modern strongest jujutsu sorcerer, he had dealt with countless kinds of curses in his life, special grade, ancient, and even those on the level of rules. But he never thought that one day he would be precisely pierced by a malice called pure love. Kyoto Jujutsu Highs. Rainfall. He pulled down his blindfold, and those pale blue, 6 eyes, flickered wildly under the cold light of the phone screen. What kind of ghost is this writing? Satoru Gojo let out an uncharacteristic wail at the convenience store entrance, causing passing office workers to glance over, and then those office workers, after seeing his face, revealed that subtle look of, oh, it's the tragic love protagonist. He, Satoru Gojo, 28 years old, romantical orientation is straight as steel probably. Currently, the number of relationships is 0 after all. In this rotten jujutsu world, he is busy balancing the higher-ups, teaching students, and exercising cursed spirit every day, even needing to use teleportation to squeeze out time for sleep. Where would he have the mood to engage in some bitter summer-like tragic love? In that drop of sugar water, he tasted the poison named best friend. Ah, who came up with this line? I just thought that popsicle was too sweet back then. What made him feel most chilled was that because the details in that novel were accurate to a creepy degree, even his own brain was producing some kind of false synesthesia. Whenever he recalled that past event, the pretentious dialogue in this novel would automatically pop up and scroll, like a rogue software that refused to leave his memory. The details are all correct, even Nanami commented that, it's not impossible. Satoru Gojo rubbed his throbbing temples. Although the physical space was as stable as ever, he could feel that a huge and viscous curse of gazes was gathering on him from every corner of Japan. That was the collective malice of thousands of readers who, after reading the novel, cast at him with the implication of, so you are that kind of person. Hey, that's too much. This kind of public opinion curse targeting my innocent body is even more difficult to deal with than that Toji. Satoru Gojo revealed an extremely broken, twisted smile. Rainfall, right. You guy, if I find you, I will definitely let you experience what a physical level of limitless is. Good night, Gojo-sensei. Mizuki Makoto cut off the power and nimbly burrowed into the quilt. Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High School, Infirmary. The cicadas outside the window were a bit noisy. Mizuki Makoto leaned against the hospital bed, his left arm in a thick cast, while his right hand held a cup of lukewarm, expensive matcha. Beside his bed, several copies of Human Anatomy Explained, and a stack of brand new, blank drawing paper were neatly piled up. Mizuki-kun, this is your compensation for emotional distress, as well as the extra payout from the school due to the intelligence failure that led to your unexpected encounter with a special grade. Gojo Satoru was sprawled on the swivel chair nearby, his sunglasses sliding down to the tip of his nose, revealing a pair of pale blue eyes that screamed, I am very annoyed. He had just returned from the higher-ups, still radiating an arrogant aura as if he had just flipped a table. Since that special grade was incorrectly classified as grade 2, I dug up quite a few benefits for you from those old geezers. Gojo Satoru's voice sounded somewhat gritted. Of course, if you can find the fool who wrote Bitter summer, I'd be willing to double the amount for you. Mizuki Makoto felt a jolt in his heart, but his face wore a smile fresher than the greenest green tea. He quickly unlocked his phone with his uninjured right hand, took a glance, and piously stuffed it under his pillow. Gojo-sensei, money is really not important. Being able to share your burdens is my honor. I've also heard of that, bitter summer. The author is truly insane to write your high sky lonely moon personality into such a love-struck fool. It's truly delightful. Oh, no, I mean, absolutely insane. I will definitely keep an eye out for clues for you. Gojo Satoru stared at him for 3 seconds, then suddenly spoke softly. Then why is there a draft of a white-haired beautiful girl wearing a jujutsu high uniform and looking despondent in the rain tucked inside that practice book in your arms? That is artistic creation. Mizuki Makoto said righteously. Sensei, that is a gender-bent piece of art meant to capture 1/10,000th of the loneliness in your charm. How can you call that drawing, doujinshi? Mizuki, congratulations on your discharge. And congratulations on your official promotion to Grade 2 Sorcerer. On the streets of Shinjuku, Panda's thick paw slapped heavily on Mizuki Makoto's shoulder, shaking him so hard his wheelchair almost fell apart on the spot. Even though you barely escaped with your life on that mission, being able to squeeze a promotion quota and Stress Observation Fund out of that bunch of rotten oranges means your net worth is probably approaching that of a Grade 1 sorcerer now. Maki Zenin, carrying a long sword wrapped in cloth, walked alongside him and made a sharp, refreshing tease. And to celebrate such an epic-making victory, a pre-meal ritual is indispensable, right? Panda revealed a simple, honest smile that made people's hair stand on end. He stared at the thick cast on Mizuki Makoto's left hand. How are you going to grab meat with that thing hanging on you? Come, let me help you, release the seal. Wait a minute. Panda. That's an imported cast I paid for myself. Hey. Crack. Panda's exquisite strength erupted instantly. Mizuki Makoto only felt his arm go cold. The cast that had accompanied him for half a month, filled with, "Get well soon," messages from his classmates, was shattered into fine white powder by Panda's inch power strike, precisely scattering with the wind. Mizuki Makoto felt his left hand regain its freedom. Before he could even move his muscles, he saw Panda take a handkerchief out of his pocket to wipe his palm, saying deeply, "There, the seal is released. Now you have the perfect constitution to squander that huge sum of money." Inside the yakiniku restaurant, the charcoal fire crackled. Waiter, this premium wagyu platter, did you print the wrong number of zeros at the end? Mizuki Makoto's hand trembled as he held the menu, his face paler than when Panda removed his cast earlier. His usually calm eyes were now fixed on the price column, as if it were some abyss that could not be looked at directly. It's not printed wrong, Mizuki. Maki took the menu quite naturally, her fingertips gracefully gliding over the most expensive options. After all, we're celebrating your survival. Eating something too cheap would be disrespectful to that compensation. Don't you agree, Yuta? Since Maki-san said so. Yuta Okatsu revealed his signature, slightly troubled smile. Bonito flakes, order it. Toge Inamaki added solemnly, even thoughtfully flipping the menu to the most expensive page for Mizuki Makoto and pointing at a bottle of vintage Daiginjo sake. Wait. That. Mizuki Makoto's eyes widened as if he had grasped the last straw, shouting hurriedly, "We're not adults yet, the law says we can't drink. This absolutely cannot be ordered. That law is for humans, right?" Panda took the wine list quite seriously and spoke in a deep, smoky voice. Panda is not a human, so I'm not restricted by that rule. So, I'll take this bottle too. Mizuki Makoto opened his mouth, looking at Panda's black and white round face, unable to find any logic to refute a self-aware cursed corpse. My money, that was compensation I earned with my own skills. When the first plate of wagyu, with marbling as beautiful as marble art, was placed on the table, Mizuki Makoto was almost crying as he flipped the tongs. Every time he heard the meat sizzle on the charcoal fire, he felt like his account balance was wailing in pain. Mizuki-kun, as a cursed corpse, I actually don't need to eat. Panda seriously stuffed a large piece of pork belly into his mouth, making a muffled, smoky sound. But my current behavior is helping you share the curse brought by money. To prevent your soul from being corrupted by this windfall, I've decided to order another bottle of the most expensive freshly squeezed fruit juice. Don't make that face. Maki elegantly picked up a piece of meat and put it in her mouth, squinting in satisfaction. Your cursed energy fluctuation is very stable right now. This feeling of heartache actually makes you look more spirited, doesn't it? Hearing this, Mizuki Makoto slowly put down the juice in his hand, pushed up his monocle, and a glimmer of extremely punchable light flashed across the lens. Oh my, Maki-chan tilde the way you say that. You can't evenshi the flow of cursed energy normally, right? Yet you're here evaluating my cursed energy fluctuation. This effort to forcefully integrate into the circle really makes me feel touched to the point of heartache too. The air froze for a second. Huh. Who are you calling, Maki-chan? And what's with that green tea tone you just used? A vein instantly popped on Maki's forehead. She stood up abruptly, took a step around the dining table, and before the scream could even be uttered, she directly used her strong, powerful arms to lock Mizuki Makoto's neck and pressed him hard against her chest. Of course, this was by no means a benefit, but a hard, muscle-filled chokehold. Ah, cough. It's going to break. I'm suffocating. Maki-sama. I was wrong. Who are you calling, Sama? I think your cursed energy is indeed quite stable, stable enough that you don't even need to breathe, right? Maki sneered and tightened her arms, as if crushing a soft persimmon that didn't know life from death. Mizuki, have a safe journey. Panda commented calmly while pouring wine. Salmon, moment of silence. Toge Inamaki calmly flipped the grilled meat. However, just as Mizuki was struggling wildly, his cheek accidentally brushed against the side of Maki's neck. There was no cloying perfume there, only a faint, clean scent mixed with cold metal and some kind of herbal shampoo. His body stiffened, and he subconsciously took a deep breath. Maki also seemed to be electrocuted, the force of her chokehold subconsciously loosened by a fraction. Through the thin casual clothes, Mizuki Makoto could feel the vitality in her skin temperature. That was the heat only a jujutsu sorcerer who had honed their body for years possessed, hot enough to make this, physically weak, artist feel dizzy. Hey, why are you blushing? Maki noticed the abnormality. She lowered her head, and their gazes collided within a distance of less than 5 centimeters. Mizuki's eyes, which were slightly moist from oxygen deprivation, reflected her face, which was full of, I'm going to kill you, but suddenly at a loss. Because Maki-chan's embrace is a bit softer than I imagined. Am I still using my brain-dead instinct to court death even when I'm about to die? Go to hell. Maki, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, pushed him away violently. She sat back in her original seat, her movements slightly too exaggerated to be hiding suspicion, but the tips of her ears revealed a highly suspicious flush under the light. Taking advantage of the gap while Maki was desperately flipping the meat, Mizuki Makoto huddled in the corner of his seat, his left hand sliding across his phone screen like an afterimage under the table. Anonymous Forum, latest update on bitter summer. Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High School, at the school gate. The noon sun was so scorching it felt like it would melt the bluestone path. Mizuki Makoto sat in the shade of the corridor, his pen scratching across the paper as he perfected the Gojo Mai bathing illustration for the latest chapter of Gojo Mai's Household Affairs. Tisk tisk, yes. That is exactly the sense of brokenness of a fallen deity. Perfect. It is simply the pinnacle of my artistic career. Hee hee. You have really captured that moment of divinity collapsing quite well. A black parasol was silently held over his head, shielding him from the blinding sunlight. Mizuki Makoto turned his head and saw a pair of slender, fox-like eyes brimming with a warm, gentle smile. The man was dressed in majestic kasaya robes, his long hair neatly tied into a half-up bun. He stood quietly beside Mizuki Makoto's wheelchair, looking just like a monk who had truly come to visit an old friend. Ah, Mr. Mizuki turned the page of his sketchbook without changing his expression, his acting flat. Life is hard, so I draw some taboo subjects to scam a bit of sponsorship. Do you want to buy one? Since you look like a Greek sculpture, I will give you a 20% discount. A Greek sculpture. What an interesting evaluation. Suguru Geto bent down and carefully examined the broken Buddhist prayer beads in the drawing. However, Makoto-kun, I can call you that, right? The her in this drawing is wearing her kasaya backward. Right hand on top, that is how the dead are dressed. But for that man, perhaps this sense of self-destruction suits him even better. You have quite the insight, Mr. He continued the conversation, his left hand swiftly sketching on a blank page. But I think that struggle of trying to grasp the last bit of light in despair is what is truly moving. Just like an ideal that you know will fail, yet you still drape yourself in magnificent kasaya robes to carry it out. Is not this self-indulgence also a form of art? Suguru Geto's eyes lit up. It was the illusion of having found a kindred spirit. The art of self-indulgence. Well said. He straightened up, the black parasol obscuring half his face. If one could use a grand destruction to commemorate such an ideal, it would certainly be an ultimate aesthetic. Mister, if my teacher hears such dangerous remarks, he will tear you down like a special grade illegal structure. Mizuki Makoto said half-jokingly, his pen already quietly landing on the paper. He is already there. Suguru Geto turned around. They are my students, do not instill your twisted ideas into them. Suguru Geto's hand holding the parasol paused slightly. He slowly turned his head, his lips curling into an arc that looked exactly like an old friend reuniting, and spoke softly to the white-haired man. Satoru, long time no see. Immediately after, Suguru Geto put away his gentleness and began his speech to Yuta Okatsu. Under the bright, almost ironic noon sun, his words were clear. Yuta, come to my side. We noble jujutsu sorcerers should not be bound by that group of foolish monkeys. When he reached the emotional part, the aura of the cult leader reached its peak under the sunlight. Ah! Achoo! Mizuki Makoto's sneeze was extremely deliberate. At that instant, among the stack of inspiration sketches on his lap, that piece of paper, which he had drawn during their chat about the art of self-indulgence, suddenly bursting with inspiration, drawn with extreme realism, extreme accuracy, and even possessing a certain incredible, serious Buddhist nature, took flight with precision, caught in the invisible current of cursed energy that Satoru Gojo had tacitly unleashed. It spun elegantly in the air twice, then, as if by fate, with a slap, it stuck perfectly onto the bridge of Suguru Geto's nose while he was in the middle of his eloquent speech. Suguru Geto's speech came to an abrupt halt. He reached out to peel the drawing off his face. The moment he saw the content on the paper, the air at the gate of Jujutsu High seemed to freeze. It was not Suguru Geto's suppressed anger, it was a system crash caused by his logical thinking receiving an all too extreme shock. It was not a draft, it was a realistic drawing of a guerrilla cult leader, majestic, solemn, and even possessing a certain color of philosophical contemplation. The gorilla's facial contours, especially the cheekbones, brow ridges, and mouth perfectly overlapped with Suguru Geto's features under some eerie, cognitive bias. It was also wearing an almost identical, majestic kasaya. Its deep, even compassionate gaze, in this moment, was like a mirror, clearly reflecting Suguru Geto's appearance at this very moment. And below the gorilla were two lines of title, written in somewhat wild cursive due to extreme shock, but clear in every word. Brother, I have discovered that as long as we kill all ordinary people, no cursed spirits will be generated. At that moment, Mizuki Makoto felt he could already see Meng Po on the road to the underworld waving at him. Satoru Gojo stared at the realistic gorilla drawing in Suguru Geto's hand, then looked at Suguru Geto's face, which was as stiff as a sculpture. PFF'd. Ha 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 ha. Geto. Ha 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 ha. When you were swearing your great cause, Just now, I did not notice, but looking at it now, this drawing is practically your self-portrait. Ha 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 ha. It even drew the patterns on the kasaya exactly like yours. Ha 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 ha. Satoru Gojo let out the most disrespectful laughter of his life, sounding as if he would laugh his lungs out. Makoto. You are a genius. I must frame this drawing and hang it at the main entrance of the higher-ups building. Sorry. I shrank behind Satoru Gojo, trembling with extremely poor acting. That was my artistic realization after chatting with Mr. about extreme aesthetics and the theory of self-disciplined evolution. I just wanted to draw an inspirational manga about a gorilla who also wants to pursue a great cause. I really did not know it would look so much like Mr. Please forgive my artistic intuition. Teacher, help. The evolutionary cult leader has manifested. Suguru Geto looked at the drawing in his hand. The compassionate gorilla cult leader was on the paper, and the compassionate cult leader Geto was outside the paper. The realism of the drawing made it impossible for him to numb himself by calling it a brat's prank. He felt a physiological, soul-piercing disgust, a sense of humiliation where his pain, his 10-year great cause, and all his heart's blood were instantly reduced to gorilla gibberish by some incredible sense of absurdity. A cold, viscous, and violent special grade pressure, sufficient to suffocate an ordinary person instantly, exploded outward. The drawing in Suguru Geto's hand instantly turned into charred black ash. In the flames, the face of the compassionate gorilla cult leader seemed to twist. But he ultimately took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the urge to kill. Taking action on Satoru Gojo's bottom line was clearly not a wise move. Satoru, I will remember this student. Suguru Geto's face was terrifyingly gloomy as he turned and led his family into the mouth of the bird-like cursed spirit. His departing gait looked, in every way, like he was impatient to never see a gorilla again. Silence returned to the gate of Jujutsu High. Makoto, I could almost smell the malice you emitted just a moment ago. Satoru Gojo pulled down his blindfold and looked at me with a half-smile. Teacher, I am just a terrified disabled jujutsu sorcerer. Mizuki Makoto reopened his workbook and quietly annotated below the discarded draft of the gorilla. Today's cultivation realization. When the cult leader saw himself in the mirror under the bright sunshine, the emotional feedback generated by the conflict between self-deification and species realism, delicious, simply delicious. Although Maki-chan did not see it, I will draw 10 pages of this story and stuff them into the crack of her dormitory door. Silence returned to the gate of Jujutsu High. Teacher, I want to eat Wagyu beef, and this time at a serving of Daiginjo sake. After all, I just performed an artist's dimensionality reduction strike in front of a special grade. Satoru Gojo put away his smile, poked my forehead with one finger expressionlessly, and said in an extremely firm tone. You can have dinner, but minors are absolutely not allowed to drink alcohol. He seemed to recall some painful memory, revealed an expression of extreme disgust, and added, and what is so good about that bitter and throat-burning stuff? That kind of biochemical weapon that can make someone black out for a day after just one cup is only for those with no taste. No, anyway, as my student, you had better come with me and drink strawberry-flavored cola. Mizuki Makoto looked at this strongest teacher, who was rumored to have been easily KO'd by alcohol at a party, and fell into deep thought. As expected, in this school, other than that lawless panda, the one who makes the least sense is this substitute teacher with a special grade disability when it comes to alcohol tolerance. In the Tokyo Jujutsu High Operations Room, the smell of tobacco mixed with tense fluctuations of cursed energy. Mei was smiling mysteriously at her checkbook, while Kento Nanami adjusted his tie, exuding a low-pressure aura of desperately wanting to get off work. That concludes the current troop deployment. Yaga Masamiki tapped the whiteboard, his eyes hidden behind his sunglasses. Hold Shinjuku and Kyoto, and eliminate all Thesamol Fry that Geto brought. As for Geto himself, leave him to Gojo. That aura of having the strongest to deliver the final blow truly gave this group of precarious jujutsu sorcerers a fleeting illusion of safety. The operations meeting ended, and Gojo Satoru walked into the first-year classroom with his hands in his pockets. Maki was cracking her knuckles, staring fiercely at Mizuki Makoto. Inamaki Toge was spraying medicine into his throat. Panda was doing chest expansion exercises, and Yuta was so nervous that his face was as pale as a corpse. Enrica behind him was emitting a bone-chilling low hum due to his anxiety. Alright, kids, it's mission assignment time. Gojo Satoru's tone was light. Maki, Toge, Panda, you stay at school to defend. As for Makoto-kun. He looked at me, his gaze behind his sunglasses carrying a hint of inquiry. Given your flashy space ability, you go to Kyoto with Mei Mei and Hikari to provide support. Is that okay? Wait a second, teacher. I sighed and leisurely fished a long cigar out of my school uniform pocket. Of course, it was just a realistic-looking chocolate stick, and casually wrapped a plaid scarf, which I don't know where I found, around my neck. I spoke in an extremely exhausted tone, as if I owed the entire human race tens of billions. Although I know the atmosphere is very passionate right now, I still can't help but ask. Teacher, and all you seniors, is the focus of you adults skewed all the way to Siberia from the very beginning? The air went quiet instantly. Maki stopped what she was doing and raised an eyebrow. Mizuki, are you itching for a beating? No, I just think the current battle plan exudes a scent of stupidity called a simplicity. Yuta, come here and help me pass the lighter. I pointed to my side with the chocolate cigar. From now on, you are my inner disciple, responsible for recording how these adults are being led by the nose like third-rate extras. Me. Yuta Okatsu moved over with a confused look. Makoto, what kind of act are you putting on again? A vein popped on Maki's forehead. Shish, don't talk, Maki-chan. You are still better suited to solving problems with muscles rather than relying on your brain. Trust me, the most suitable combat style for you is, muscles connect to the brain, intuition replaces thinking. Mizuki Makoto stood up, walked to the map in front of the classroom, and casually drew an X over the two large circles with the chocolate stick, his gaze becoming like a strict lecturer facing a class of students who failed. I don't understand, why is everyone talking about where Geto Suguru is going to start the war, as if these two stages, Shinjuku and Kyoto, have already determined our doom. 10 years ago, Geto Suguru and Gojo Sensei joined forces to embark on a journey from here, starting the era known as the strongest duo. The Jujutsu world even experienced a state of, all things competing and thriving, that is still fresh in my memory. Who could have imagined that just 10 years later, this place would actually become our burial ground? I paused on purpose, watching everyone's curiosity being piqued, and felt a secret thrill. But I didn't intend to reveal the answer immediately. Instead, I continued to tease them leisurely. In the world of Jujutsu, the point is never, how to do it, but, why did it? Or rather, why didn't Geto Suguru do this before? The reason he didn't act before is actually quite normal, because Gojo Satoru is the strongest, the kind of anomaly who can kill everyone alone in the literal sense. So the question is, why did he choose now, believing he can challenge the teacher? He raised an eyebrow, his tone becoming somewhat cynical. Could it be, teacher, are you really, as written in Bitter Summer, having some dirty adult transactions with him in private? Like exchanging some love tokens during that declaration of war reunion, sumimasen. I shouldn't have made a joke that might get me killed on the spot by the teacher. I keenly noticed the corner of Gojo Satoru's mouth twitch, and I quickly returned to the main topic. There is only one truth, and it's shockingly simple. For cursed spirit manipulation, the relic that can best help him reverse the causality of the strongest, Mr. Yuta, is currently sitting brazenly on my right-hand side. Mizuki Makoto's gaze crossed over everyone and landed straight on the trembling Yuta Okatsu. Yuta right now can't control Rika at all, right? He isn't a combat force, instead, he is a nuclear bomb that could explode at any time. Since Geto Suguru's goal is to build a world only for jujutsu sorcerers, then what he needs most is the ultimate cursed spirit capable of reversing the strongest variable. And now, Rika is just hanging on Yuta, who hasn't even learned to walk yet. I spread my hands and sighed. Shinjuku and Kyoto are nothing but large-scale decoys, just like a magician using flashy tricks to attract the audience's attention. He just wants to lure all the guard dogs away and then come back to harvest the takeout he likes most. Teacher, you adults, have you been blinded by the fancy phrase, night parade of 100 demons? The classroom fell into a deathly silence. Gojo Satoru pulled up a corner of his blindfold, and those 6 eyes flickered with an unprecedented cold light in the dim classroom. He turned to look at the pale-faced Yuta Okatsu, and then looked at Mizuki, who had a face that said, "I've figured it all out." Makoto. He suddenly laughed, but there was a chilling edge in that smile. It seems my moral education for you is still too relaxed, actually letting you learn to play cosplay on such a serious occasion. Indeed. Gojo Satoru surprisingly did not refute. He leaned against the blackboard, his right index finger tapping his arm rhythmically. The original, strongest, pressure instantly receded, replaced by a kind of laziness called protecting one's own. Makoto is right, the probability that Geto's target is Yuta is very high. But he looked up, and although separated by the blindfold, I could feel those 6 eyes looking past the window at the streets of Tokyo hundreds of kilometers away. Even if I know it's a lure the tiger off the mountain strategy, I must go to Shinjuku. After all, that is a welcome party, specially prepared for me by Geto. Why? Maki frowned and slapped the table somewhat impatiently. Since we know his target is Yuta, can't we just guard Tokyo Jujutsu High strictly? That hair bun fool, no matter how strong he is, can't break through everyone's defense line, right? No, Maki-chan. Gojo Satoru shook his head, a smile of course curling at the corner of his mouth. Precisely because I understand Geto, I know that since he dared to declare war, he would never just put a few small fries in Shinjuku to scare ordinary people. His voice was light but unquestionable. He deployed combat power in Shinjuku, which was prepared specifically to drag me down. If I don't go, those things originally aimed at me will go berserk, and by then, Shinjuku will really become the losing business that Mei hates the most. I would feel bad leaving such trouble to others. Mizuki Makoto was silent. This was Gojo Satoru's style of gentleness. Even if he knew it was a conspiracy against him, he would choose to step into the trap alone to prevent his colleagues and students from suffering unnecessary casualties. Is this what they call the capable work harder? He sighed and put the drawing board into his school bag. Using the teacher's sense of responsibility to forcibly strip the strongest combat power from the main battlefield. This guy Geto Suguru really knows how to take care of old friends. You really have poor judgment in friends, Gojo-sensei. So, the plan remains the same. Gojo Satoru clapped his hands, returning to that somewhat annoying, mischievous tone. He looked at us, his eyes full of the arrogance that makes people feel at ease. So, Makoto, you go to Kyoto with Mei to provide support, try to solve it quickly, and then rush back using that move of yours. No problem, right? Gojo Satoru patted my shoulder, acting as if he was sending his beloved friends and family to the front line as human fireworks. I stood still, lifted the tablet, and made an extremely disgusted expression. Tisk, white-haired guy, you really did figure it out. Teacher, I request to stay behind. I raised my hand, expressionlessly interrupting Gojo Satoru's action of preparing to pack me off to Kyoto. Oh. Gojo Satoru stopped and turned his head, the eye behind the sunglasses sizing me up with interest. Makoto-kun, that analysis of yours just now sounds very plausible, but you have to know, if Geto is really eyeing Yuta, staying at Tokyo Jujutsu High is not a job for Lord Mizuki, but the awareness of a sacrifice. He deliberately drew out his tone, with a hint of teasing. Or are you actually afraid of those cursed spirits in Kyoto that look too abstract? No, teacher. As the saying goes, if the king does not advance first, how will his subordinates follow? If Lord Mizuki I is not here, Sphinx Maki, Flat Inamaki, and inner disciple Yuta Gray are just a bunch of idiots. Ha! Makoto-kun, you guy. Gojo Satoru suddenly laughed. He supported his chin with one hand, as if re-evaluating me. You actually chose Yuta instead of Mei Mei. He pulled up a corner of his blindfold, revealing those pale blue six eyes, his tone suddenly becoming somewhat mischievous, with a bit of gritted teeth playfulness. When I saw you drawing Gojo Satoru, you clearly said you liked the mature and wealthy, Oni-san, type like Mei Mei. I even specifically left the good job of earning big money by following Mei Mei for my cute student. Could it be? He leaned close to me and said in a joking, light tone, could it be that Makoto-kun actually likes the gloomy, pure-hearted type like Yuta? That's why you can't bear to leave. Teacher, please put away your dangerous imagination. Mei Mei's commission is too expensive. I'm afraid I'll go bankrupt if I stay with her for too long. I sighed, but my gaze was surprisingly calm. As the saying goes, the number of jujutsu sorcerers is 5 to 1. The advantage is with me, since Shinjuku is a trap specially prepared for you. Then here at Tokyo Jujutsu High, we need someone who can see through Geto Suguru's various tricks at a glance. Maki and the others are too, pure, and Yuta is too gentle. Only a guy with a heart like mine can hold on for a few more rounds in front of that old lover of yours, right? Mizuki, who are you calling an idiot? Maki waved her fist in the back. Gojo Satoru was silent for a long while, then suddenly burst into hearty laughter. He patted the back of my head hard, with enough force that he almost pressed me into the floor tiles. Good. Since Makoto-kun has this determination, then I approve. He put his blindfold back on, his tone as light as if approving a summer school application. Then the command of Tokyo Jujutsu High, although it is Maki in name, the decision-making power for the limitless part is left to you. He put his blindfold back on, turned, and walked toward the classroom door, waving at us, his back still arrogantly reassuring. Maki, Toge, Panda, and Yuta and Makoto. You five stay at school, consider it participating in a paid vacation picnic. If Geto really runs over. He looked back and blinked, his tone as light as if he were discussing what to have for dinner. Then just try a little harder and beat him flat, okay? Don't worry, I will finish the trouble in Shinjuku as soon as possible and come back to bring you souvenirs. Makoto, don't die, otherwise, I will photocopy all your browsing history and plaster it on the school gate. Then you better come back quickly, that way of dying is too terrifying. I watched Gojo Satoru disappear at the end of the corridor, turned my head, and found that Maki and the others were looking at me with a look that said, you really are dirty. What are you looking at? He picked up the drawing board again, a somewhat broken arc curling at the corner of his mouth. Since the strongest has left the field to us, we have to prepare some decent surprises for that heartless lover, right? Makoto-kun, my name is not Yuta Gray. Also, your cigar has melted, your mouth is full of chocolate sauce, it looks like you are spitting black blood. Shut up, Yuta. This is the dignity of a monarch. December 24th. Afternoon. Outside the Tokyo Jujutsu High barrier. Maki stood on the hillside, gripping her long sword tightly, her eyes glaring fiercely at the silent street in the distance. Makoto, are you sure you want to leave me here? She spoke through her earpiece, her voice somewhat impatient. Doesn't the inside of Tokyo Jujutsu High need combat power more? Since Geto's target is Yuta, I should be guarding Yuta's side. Maki-chan tilde the inside of Tokyo Jujutsu High doesn't need honest combat power, it only needs the combat power of a heart. Mizuki Makoto sat slumped on the bench in the training ground, fiddling with a mobile phone that didn't even have a signal. Your mission is more important than fighting. Remember, as soon as you see the curtain rise over Tokyo Jujutsu High, signal Gojo Sensei immediately, my life is in your hands, you know. I know that Suguru Geto is a meticulous madman. Since he dared to choose this day to make his move, he must have deployed pieces in Shinjuku capable of stalling Satoru Gojo, that Mamba guy named Miguel. He is a formidable character who can use the special cursed tool, Black Rope, to stall Satoru Gojo for a full 20 minutes while Gojo is unable to go all out in the bustling city, for example, using unlimited void or large-scale blue, red, or purple. And I, inside Tokyo Jujutsu High, have to engage in a duel called a time trial against Miguel. Let's see if our semi-grade 1 group can stall Suguru Geto longer, or if Miguel can stall Satoru Gojo longer. Mizuki Makoto took a deep breath. Miguel, why must you get involved in the messy business of these two tragic lovers, the DK5 and Suguru Geto? It's resulted in you taking elbows from Satoru Gojo in Shinjuku, while I have to block Suguru Geto's playful cloud with my skull at Tokyo Jujutsu High. Truly, we are like a pair of smiling tigers and two black-horned sharks. Although I've been freeloading Satoru Gojo's power via Limitless, I am not that man who has the 6 eyes cheat. Always on Limitless. Automatically adjusting output. Don't joke around. If I tried that level of operation, my brain would explode like an overloaded microwave. Currently, my limit is, within 1 hour, I can use 3 absolute limitless defenses, each lasting 3 seconds. 3 seconds, in the eyes of a special grade Jujutsu sorcerer, that's enough to die 100 times over. And my total cursed energy is enough for about 3 castrated versions of blue or red. 3 defenses, 3 attacks. To rely on this to hold out for 20 minutes in front of Suguru Geto, a special grade curse user who possesses thousands of cursed spirits and uses maximum techniques at the drop of a hat. This isn't a competition at all. This is playing fast and furious with Meng Po on the road to the afterlife. Mizuki Makoto wiped the cold sweat from his palms and gulped down the last of the icy cola. Since his combat power was being dimensionally crushed in every way, he could only choose another, more weakling-style way of fighting. Using the intelligence gap between humans and apes to throw the boomerang right back into his face. An extremely oppressive vibration came through the air. Mizuki Makoto jerked his head up and saw the black curtain over Tokyo Jujutsu High spreading rapidly like ink, swallowing the last of the sunlight. It's done. The signal from Maki's side should have been sent already. So it's here, our victim of a broken home, abandoned husband of Tokyo Jujutsu High, the world-shocking genius. Mizuki Makoto stood up and stretched his stiff neck. He shoved his trembling hands into his pockets, a look of relief curling onto his face. The training ground gate was pushed open silently. Suguru Geto wore that loose kasaya, his long hair half-tied, his narrow eyes carrying a kind of pity that saw through the secular world, as well as an extreme disgust for non-sorcerers, hidden behind his divinity. His gaze swept across the empty training ground and finally landed on Mizuki Makoto. Mizuki Makoto. That guy Gojo actually left a knockoff like you to guard the door. It seems Tokyo Jujutsu High really is out of people. Mr. Geto. Mizuki Makoto walked forward step by step, meeting the pressure that would have paralyzed a grade 2 Jujutsu sorcerer. There was no fear, only a malice to thoroughly stir up the situation. Before you make your move, out of professional habit, I can't help but want to conduct a friendly peer review of your so-called great cause. Suguru Geto stopped in his tracks, looking at the boy in front of him with interest, as if watching a monkey trying to wag its tail at him. Oh. What do you want to say? I want to say, your plan of, I will kill all non-sorcerers and create a world with only sorcerers, is simply the most world-shocking wisdom of this century. His speech was extremely fast, and every word stepped precisely on Suguru Geto's delusional pride. How many Jujutsu sorcerers are there in the world? 1,000. 2,000. 10,000. And you should know better than anyone that the identity of a Jujutsu sorcerer cannot be stably inherited through bloodlines. 2 Jujutsu sorcerers having a child can still result in a normal person, without cursed energy. With this pathetic base number, if you kill all the normal people, are you trying to trigger natural extinction? Gojo-sensei often says one thing to us, read more books. Mizuki Makoto stopped and sighed deliberately, his eyes full of sincerity. I think he actually wanted to say this to you, his best friend. After all, for you, the most important thing right now isn't some night parade of 100 demons, but to go and learn some basic mathematics and biology. He sneered and spread his hands. Imagine it, Lord Suguru Geto. In your wonderful world of only jujutsu sorcerers, a small epidemic that isn't fatal to non-sorcerers strikes, and because there isn't a large enough scientific research base to develop medicine, the whole world is left with only those few special grade jujutsu sorcerers who can use reverse curse technique. Oh, wait, can you use reverse curse technique? I don't think so. So at that time, are you going to say to our beloved Mizieri Shoko, bear with it a little longer, Shoko-chan, I'll take the blame. Suguru Geto's smile froze on his face little by little. The air around him began to twist, and several low-level cursed spirits emerged from the shadows. That was proof of his emotional fluctuation. So, to be able to come up with such an excellent and completely unfeasible plan, Mr. Suguru Geto, your intelligence is enough to go to the African savannah to play sumo with chimpanzees, become the tribal king of the apes, and lead them to the peak of evolution into ape men. Instead of being here, trying to challenge the responsibility of the strongest, with a few thousand small fry cursed spirits. Current time. 013. Goal. Hold on for another 19 minutes 47 seconds. The moment his words fell, Mizuki Makoto reached into his chest with extreme naturalness. Whoosh! Something cut through the air, flying straight toward Suguru Geto. Suguru Geto reached out and caught it almost subconsciously. It was a bright yellow, ripe banana. And on the banana, taped extremely firmly with adhesive tape, was the crystallization of Mizuki Makoto's life's work. That extremely realistic, even somewhat Buddhist, ape curse group leader's great cause diagram. The compassionate ape wearing the same kasaya in the picture, along with the banana taped to it, silently completed the ultimate, intelligence and species, double certification for this special grade curse user. Suguru Geto stared fixedly at the ape curse leader certification set in his hand. The air in the entire training ground froze completely at this moment. It wasn't anger, but a complete system crash caused by an excessive shock to his thinking. Suguru Geto slowly lowered his head, his bangs covering his expression. When he raised his head again, the pity in his eyes had completely disappeared, leaving only an extreme, frost-like murderous intent. Mizuki Makoto. Congratulations, you have successfully made me change my mind. He reached out, and a huge, sharp-toothed special-grade cursed spirit let out a heaven-shaking roar from the shadows behind him. I don't intend to feed you to the cursed spirits anymore. I'm going to tear your mouth off myself and see what kind of filthy things are stuffed inside. Come on then, Mr. Leader of the Ape Curse Group. Mizuki Makoto's mouth curled up. First limitless defense, 3 seconds, activate. Is that all it takes to break your composure? It seems the mental fortitude of a special grade curse user is just like that faded kasaya of yours, it can't stand even the slightest bit of wear and tear. Mizuki Makoto stood his ground. Even though his legs were trembling as if he were fluffing cotton, he wore a sneer of extreme contempt, even tinged with a hint of pity. Geto Suguru did not speak. The air around him had become thick with extreme rage. The disgust for monkeys, and the fury at having his grand cause insulted eventually converged into the destructive ball of light in his palm. Maximum technique, Uzumaki. He whispered, his voice as cold as if it had fallen into an ice cellar. Thousands of cursed spirits were instantly forcibly compressed and twisted, transforming into a black-purple torrent of energy capable of piercing through the entire Jujutsu High campus. That was the anger of a special grade, a violence capable of altering the terrain. It was coming. Life and death hung in this very instant. I watched the roaring shockwave and frantically calibrated the 1%, knockoff limitless, in my mind. What was the rumor Geto Suguru heard? That I was a low-quality imitator of Satoru Gojo who could only copy the surface. If I dodged, he would immediately realize I was just a flea with maxed out agility and then drown me in a sea of cursed spirits. If I took it head on but got injured, he would mock my overestimation of my own abilities. But what if I didn't move at all and let this special grade's ultimate move disappear into the limitless? Or even better, what if I took it a step further? Limitless, activate. First limitless defense duration, 3 seconds. Cursed technique linkage. Activate Ashoradan, omnidirectional reflection architecture. Boom. A deafening roar echoed through Jujutsu High. The black-purple torrent of energy slammed hard against the barrier of the void. Normally, with the current strength of his Ashoradan, he would be instantly pulverized by this torrent. But at this moment, with the help of the 3-second vacuum period, created by the limitless, where nothing could reach him, the originally thin spatial displacement was infinitely magnified. In Geto Suguru's horrified gaze, the Uzumaki, capable of erasing everything, stopped eerily less than 5 centimeters from the tip of Mizuki Makoto's nose. In that very moment of stagnation, my brain, which was already overloaded and even beginning to ache, issued the final command, Ashoradan, omnidirectional vector correction. Time. 0.1 seconds. The energy torrent formed a massive, constantly collapsing black-purple sphere of light less than 5 centimeters in front of me. Time. 0.2 seconds. The spatial displacement effect of Ashoradan was no longer a simple deflection of the attack. Instead, it constructed a perfect, mirror-like, reflective plane in front of the 3-second absolute defense shield. Time. 3.1 seconds. Within that untouchable distance, the Uzumaki, that had been roaring toward me, the moment it hit this plane, had all its forward kinetic energy and all its destructive cursed energy forcibly twisted 180 degrees. It was as if it had been grabbed by the hand of a god and then thrown back along the same path with tremendous force. Boom. In the instant before Geto Suguru could even manage a mocking smile, the Uzumaki he had released himself, capable of piercing through the entire Jujutsu High, roared back in retaliation at a speed even more terrifying and with a posture even more violent than before. Snap. The black-purple torrent of energy slammed without reservation and with pinpoint precision into Geto Suguru's frozen face. A massive explosion erupted, the ground of the training field trembled, and dust and energy ripples instantly swallowed the figure of this special grade curse user. 3 seconds ended. The pitch-black cursed energy dissipated. Mizuki Makoto stood where he was, completely unharmed, not even his hairstyle was messed up, and he even elegantly brushed non-existent dust off his clothes. Is that it? Is that really it? No way, this is supposed to be one of the strongest, a special grade, from the same era as Gojo-sensei. How on earth were you two called the strongest duo, back then? Could it be that you were the one responsible for cackling on the sidelines while Gojo-sensei did all the slaughtering, making you the cackle-slaughter combo? He tilted his head, watching the dust and smoke slowly dissipate, his tone dripping with extreme mockery. Geto-san, your maximum technique seems even softer and weaker than Gojo-sensei's chest. To think that I, a knockoff, could just casually flick it back onto your perfect face. The dust and smoke slowly cleared. Mizuki Makoto stood where he was, unscathed, even having the leisure to adjust his monocle. Opposite him, half of the sleeve of Geto Suguru's dignified kasaya had been blown to shreds, and the carefully groomed lock of hair on his forehead looked somewhat disheveled. In his narrow eyes, for the first time, a crack appeared, known as shaken. No way. Seriously. Mizuki Makoto looked at him, deliberately covering his mouth with an exaggerated expression, and let out an incredibly annoying exclamation. Geto-san, didn't you and sensei form the strongest for several years? Why do you look like you've never seen this move before? He tilted his head, his eyes filled with the kind of pity that said, I really can't do anything with you, and his tone was extremely flippant. Ah, sorry, I forgot. This move is called Cursed Technique Reversal. Mirror, a new derivative of Limitless that sensei only recently developed. After all, he's always improving. And as an old man, like you living in the past decade, who can't even figure out basic math and biology, naturally, you wouldn't understand this kind of high-dimensional spatial manipulation. This was a lie, but in the eyes of Geto Suguru at this moment, it was the absolute truth. And this sentence was even more ruthless than the Uzumaki deflection from just a moment ago. Mizuki Makoto could even clearly see Geto Suguru's fingers, hanging at his sides, trembling violently. Satoru, a newly developed move. He muttered, his voice as hoarse as if it were filled with bloody sand. For a madman like him, obsessed with the past and obsessed with that time of the strongest duo, the most painful thing was not defeat, but realizing that the person he had been chasing for 10 years had, in a corner he couldn't see, quietly taken another big step forward, while he was left helpless against a knockoff. Current time 1:15. Goal: hold out for another 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Are you angry, old man? Mizuki Makoto took another step forward, a faint red hollow shell effect flickering on his fingertips. Actually, I understand. After all, a gorilla abandoned by the era, besides roaring in the ruins of the old times, really doesn't have anything else to do. Should I draw this part to look cooler in the manga later? How about the title, There is no ship in the new era to carry me? Shut up. It's getting better, this guy has finally started to use his brain. Looking at Geto Suguru's unpredictable expression, his eyes so deep that it felt like he wanted to dismantle me into Gundam pieces, the dark little person inside me was already dancing frantically on his wheelchair. What is Mizuki Makoto most afraid of? It's you completely ignoring martial ethics, rushing up with that heavy as hell 3-section staff, hitting me 6 times a second, using your powerful physique and cursed energy to unreasonably bully me, playing Tokyo Running Man with me. Once the 3 seconds of Limitless are over, I'd have to use an auto-reply for my last words. But now, Geto Suguru has stopped. The killing intent in his eyes has been replaced by a deeper emotion called trepidation. He is analyzing the enemy's consumption, he is deducing the blind spots of the technique, and he is trying to find even a shred of a flaw in my feat of deflecting the Uzumaki just now. Yes, that's it. Suguru, you must think, keep thinking. And the moment you think, I will laugh. Because in this game of deception where life is the stake, once you start analyzing a con artist based on incorrect fundamental information, you have already lost everything, even your underwear, right from the starting line. Please, by all means, keep thinking, Lord Cult Leader. Watching Geto Suguru's deep, calculating gaze as he frantically deduced things, the angel on Mizuki Makoto's shoulder was nearly laughing itself into oxygen deprivation. As long as you don't come charging at me with your 3-section staff to give me a makeup lesson for all those gym classes I skipped, forcing me to perform a 3 strikes to shatter the strongest soul, teacher, I am a Jujutsu high student, show on the spot, then we're good. After all, having seen with my own eyes someone treat an Uzumaki level maximum technique, like a ping-pong ball and reflect it back, unless you're that muscle-brained Maki-chan strike that special grade gorilla, you wouldn't dare use your ultimate move to seal your own fate before figuring out the reflection mechanism. Geto Suguru did not unleash that earth-shattering Uzumaki again, nor did he charge in with playful cloud to engage in hand-to-hand combat. He slowly raised his hand, palm facing the ground. Cursed spirit manipulation, multiple parallelism. In that instant, the shadows behind him were no longer a mindless sea of cannon fodder, but had precisely separated into over 100 Grade 1, Semi-Grade 1, and Grade 2 cursed spirits of various shapes and sizes. They didn't roar mindlessly like before, instead, like programmed special forces, they split into over a dozen tactical squads, locking down that brat from every angle, above, below, left, right, and even every blind spot in space. If that truly is limitless, then how many directions and types of attacks can you handle at once? Geto Suguru stood elegantly with his hands behind his back, tilting his head slightly, his eyes filled with a cold, scrutinizing gaze. In this moment, He didn't look like a curse user in a life or death battle, but rather like a teacher standing at the podium of Jujutsu High, conducting a pop quiz for a mischievous student. Mizuki-kun, consider this an end-of-life assignment. I'm gifting you. Gojo's limitless, which is like a miracle, is essentially nothing more than absolute control over distance and space. Geto Suguru stood elegantly with his hands behind his back, his eyes narrowing with a cruelty that suggested he wanted to peel Mizuki Makoto layer by layer and strip him to the bone. Then, how far does this limitless of yours actually extend? Can it block malice coming from all directions simultaneously? Or, does your so-called limitless only protect the small space that your eyes can see? He whispered softly, his tone so gentle it was chilling, and tapped his right index finger lightly against the void. Don't disappoint me, Mizuki-kun. If you can't solve this problem, the price you pay may be to be buried in these shadows along with your meager answer. The 2017 Jujutsu High Students Extracurricular Tutoring Session for the Primitive Gorilla is just getting started, Mr. Bunhead. Mizuki Makoto wiped away the nosebleed caused by his brain overheating, casually smeared it onto his jacket to draw a mocking smiley face in blood, then ripped off his school uniform jacket and threw it into the sea of cursed spirits. Rip. The moment the jacket left his body, Mizuki Makoto's bare arms and back made direct contact with the surrounding space, and the range of Ushora-dan expanded exponentially in that instant. He took a deep breath, fighting through the sharp pain in the depths of his brain from overexertion, and the Azure special effect on his fingertips burst instantly. Blue. Mizuki Makoto let out a low shout, and a second before those hundreds of Grade 1 and Grade 2 cursed spirits could tear him apart, his figure erupted through the murderous array like a distorted shadow of space. After shedding the cumbersome Jujutsu High jacket, his bare arms, shoulders, and back were in direct contact with the surrounding air coordinates. The Ushora-dan, which could originally only control the small area around his hands, had its range of perception expand exponentially in that moment. It was like an eel coated in lubricant, sliding into this black mire made of cursed spirits. Whoosh! The first wave of wind blades and venom attacked from his blind spot. Mizuki Makoto didn't even turn his head. The azure, knockoff blue dancing on his fingertips as a special effect, burst instantly, visually forming a terrifying suction point. Facing the cursed spirits closing in from all dimensions, he didn't dodge. Instead, he met those claws capable of tearing apart a tank by throwing a heavy punch wreathed in blue electrical arcs. In that 10,000th of a second, his fist seemed to generate a microscopic gravitational black hole. A fraction of a second before the fangs of that Grade 3 centipede cursed spirit touched Mizuki Makoto's skin, it was as if it had been caught by a super magnet, its entire body eerily adhered to him. Immediately after, I followed through with a flashy over-the-shoulder throw, using its own momentum to smash it hard into the group of cursed spirits sneaking up from behind. Bang! The sound of bones shattering echoed across the field, and the two waves of cursed spirits collided into a pile of mush. However, the actual operating mechanism was a scam that would be enough to infuriate Geto Suguru. In reality, Mizuki Makoto had no ability to create a gravitational black hole. As a physical combat weakling who had skipped countless gym classes, he couldn't fight cursed spirits with brute physical force like the future Itadori Yuji or the current Maki. He merely gathered an infinitesimal amount of blue on his fist, creating an extremely weak, yet crucial, capture anchor point. The force of this blue couldn't pull anything, but when it touched a cursed spirit's body, it created a strange sense of adhesion, preventing the target from breaking away from his touch for a fraction of a second. And that split second was all he needed. When my skin, which was in large area contact with the air, captured the opponent's movement, Ushora-dan would activate instantly. I didn't need to struggle to grab them. I just needed to flick them lightly in the direction of their own force, letting all their power slide along the curves of my body into empty space. The only thing I needed to do was, the moment they touched my skin, I would force their original forward vector to slide backward along my muscle lines, It was like placing a bar of lard-coated soap under the wheels of a speeding race car. It was as if I first used a small magnet to precisely position them within my attack range, and then used my entire body, coated in lard, to gently nudge all their momentum and violent kinetic energy, smashing them into their companions. The visual, gravitational adhesion, was merely an illusion of forced contact, caused by their own momentum being too strong, combined with being positioned and having their coordinates shifted by my weak blue. Using Ushoridan to slightly shift the point of impact in space was, when facing a group fight, practically like activating a bug-level passive skill of 100% reflection, and everyone beats each other up. Any attack that couldn't hit Mizuki Makoto would eventually land precisely on the faces of its companions. He strolled leisurely in the center of the carnage, where cursed spirits were hurting each other. Amidst the purple blood and severed limbs splattering everywhere, his bare upper body remained enviably clean. Like a ghost that didn't exist in this dimension, no matter how those hundreds of cursed spirits squeezed and roared, he always dodged and maneuvered within that tiny space, moving as elegantly as if he were performing a waltz titled, Bloody Violence. Praise you, great leader of the Pan-Gorilla cult. Ah, yes, 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 keep releasing those small fry cursed spirits. Mizuki Makoto was singing praises to this guerrilla cult leader, like crazy in his heart. While strolling nonchalantly through the swarm of cursed spirits, he was rapidly calculating the assets of the bunhead cult leader in his mind. During the night parade of 100 demons, he released one special grade in Kyoto, and I killed one during that previous grade 2 promotion test, so there should still be one special grade imaginary cursed spirit, Tamamo no Mei, that hasn't been used yet. As expected, Geto, teacher, you probably don't have that many special grade cursed spirits in your hand. As a not so special grade jujutsu sorcerer, you would never squander your last remaining assets during this probing phase. As long as you insist on using these grade 1 and grade 2 small fry to play pop quiz with me, given the current cursed energy consumption, I can definitely hold out until Miguel gets elbowed into a nagel by the white-haired geezer, relying on this space slide trick and the gravitational interference fooled as blue. Former special grade San, your pop quiz seems a bit too gentle. Mizuki Makoto violently twisted a grade 1 cursed spirit covered in eyes into a pretzel, casually smashed away two small fry attempting to approach, wiped the sweat from his face, and flashed an extremely arrogant smile at Geto Suguru in the distance. If this is all you've got, I suggest you fill out that blank retirement report sooner rather than later. After all, this kind of grueling manual labor is hardly worthy of your so-called great cause. If you're really bored out of your mind, why not spend these 20 minutes quietly thinking about what posture you should use to admit your mistake so it's less embarrassing when the teacher arrives. Current time, 8:20. Goal: hold out for another 11 minutes and 40 seconds. Geto Suguru stared fixedly at the student not far away. The killing intent in his eyes was gradually being replaced by a deep sense of absurdity. He even began to wonder if he was truly outdated. Could his choice really be wrong, and Gojo's approach the correct one? What about the parents he killed with his own hands? What did that make him, having killed his own parents? What's wrong, Mr. Geto? Small fry of this level can't even scratch the paint on this, limitless, of mine. Mizuki Makoto stood in the center of the encirclement of hundreds of cursed spirits, hands in his pockets, his tone so arrogant that he wanted to slap himself twice. But he knew that the more punchable he acted, the more Geto Suguru would suspect he was approaching Gojo Satoru's limitless. However, out of Geto Suguru's line of sight, his legs were actually shaking uncontrollably, and the cold sweat on his back had already soaked through his shirt. Gojo-sensei. Haven't you had enough fun in Shinjuku yet? Mizuki Makoto let out a shrill roar in the depths of his heart. That's just a black dude with braids who's rebelling against the natural order and playing with a whip. Aren't you the strongest? Is it that hard to blast him to the Pacific Ocean with one red? I'm begging you, even if you just teleport over here and give me one look, I could save myself from burning another 20,000 brain cells. Makoto-kun, you seem distracted. Suguru Geto's voice echoed eerily, carrying a viscous chill like that of a viper. His long, narrow fox-like eyes narrowed slightly, keenly capturing the flash of anxiety in Mizuki Makoto's gaze, the kind that screamed, "I'm about to reach my limit." Distracted. Mizuki Makoto's mouth twitched, but he forced his expression back into that mocking mode guaranteed to send any villain's blood pressure skyrocketing. He even let out an elegant yawn, his eyes languid. I was just wondering, when Satoru Gojo returns later, should I praise him for his speed, or complain that he ruined my rare, live-action Dynasty Warriors experience? After all, you don't see this high-quality lawnmower session every day. Hey! A vein throbbed on Suguru Geto's temple, and the elegant aura of the cult leader cracked instantly. Since you enjoy playing games so much, you wouldn't mind adding 2 more elite monsters, would you, Makoto-kun? He raised his hand again. Although he still didn't dare to rush in for melee combat Mizuki Makoto, I appreciate your caution. From the shadows behind him, 2 hill-sized special-grade cursed spirits emerged as if by magic. Suguru Geto, why do you have so much stock? This is the 5th one, right? Have these years away from that old white-haired geezer been that repressed? Did you buy out the entire cursed spirit catalog? Mizuki Makoto roared miserably in his heart, but he had to maintain that punchable, is that all? Smile on his face. He was squeezing every drop out of Ashura Dan. While this defensive spatial displacement was relatively efficient with cursed energy, the toll on his brain cells was suicidal. It was like forcing a piece of junk computer that couldn't even spin its own fan to run Assassin's Creed Origins on max settings. The graphics card was overheating to the point of catching fire, yet he still had to crank the monitor brightness to the max and brag to his neighbor, "Look, the quality is as smooth as silk." Current time, 8:33. Goal: hold on for another 11 minutes and 27 seconds. Makoto. Are you not done yet? Maki's voice, suppressed to the extreme, came through the earpiece. Almost. Almost. Mizuki Makoto gritted his teeth, muttering in a voice only he could hear. Brother Miguel, I spoke too loudly earlier. You are a real man. I beg you, stop holding on. Satoru Gojo, I implore you to kick that black man who plays with whips and defies the heavens away, and then immediately flash back here to take over this mess. The price of maintaining overloaded defense for so long was the appearance of large red spots on his retinas. In his eyes, Suguru Geto's signature bun had begun to ghost. 3, 5, the whole mountain was covered in black buns. Mr. Geto, seriously. Mizuki Makoto wiped the blood spilling from the corner of his eye, revealing a smile that teetered on the edge of a breakdown. If you don't bring out something more impressive, I'm really going to start imagining you in Planet of the Apes in my head. The air pressure around Suguru Geto plummeted below freezing. And Mizuki Makoto roared frantically in his heart, Satoru Gojo. If you don't come soon, this time next year you'll only be able to offer the final chapter of Gojo Mai, Household Affairs, at my grave. And the unfinished kind at that. The kind without an ending. His brain felt like it was melting, and the ringing in his ears sounded like 1,000 cicadas dancing wildly in his brain matter. I know, stop making noise in my brain. The passive defense of Ashura Dan has reached its limit. To make this meticulous man retreat completely, the only way is to hit him with a more shocking, more Satoru Gojo style dimension-breaking blow. My brother from another mother and father, Aoi Todo, I'm sorry, but today I have to borrow the violent aesthetics of the big truck that ran you over. Cursed technique switch. Echo mimicry target mounted. Yuki Tsukumo, Star Rage. Boom. The flow of cursed energy in Mizuki Makoto's body instantly surged from light threads into a violent black hole. Although he only mimicked the surface of that imaginary mass, it was enough to up the stakes in this charade. He stepped forward violently, and the concrete ground beneath his feet instantly cracked radially, unable to withstand the virtual pressure. This is the cheat code passed down by Satoru Gojo 9 phases, dusk, eye of wisdom. He extended his right hand, fingers gripping the air. His fingertips were no longer a pure azure blue, but stained with a dark red so heavy it was suffocating. Inferior version Star Rage plus inferior version Blue. Under the violent fusion of Limitless, these two tyrannical forces underwent a qualitative change, like a chemical reaction. Blue Rage Play. Bang. With this as the center, the space within a 30-meter radius seemed to be crushed by an invisible giant hand. The two special grade cursed spirits didn't even have time to scream before they were instantly pulled into eerie, elongated shapes by that irresistible gravitational force, and then pulverized into dust by the terrifying pressure exploding from the center. When the raging dust finally dissipated, Mizuki Makoto stood alone in the center of the huge crater. White smoke rose from his half-naked shoulders, and the crimson light at his fingertips flickered, his cool factor off the charts. Suguru Geto stared fixedly at Mizuki Makoto, his original, calculated, cult leader demeanor completely shattered. Before him, this mere grade 2 sorcerer was not only proficient in the micro-control of Limitless, but also hid this kind of violence capable of instantly killing a special grade cursed spirit. Grade 2 sorcerer. This term was like a rusty nail, stabbing deeply into his memories. In the summer of 2006, he and Satoru Gojo had also worn the badges of this rank, declaring with high spirits, "We are the strongest." That sensation of treating space as a toy, of playing with the laws of physics in the palm of one's hand. Satoru, this is impossible, he whispered. He trusted, knew, and understood Satoru Gojo too well. That gravitational force that instantly killed a special grade was, without a doubt, the real, authentic Blue. The Mizuki Makoto before his eyes was no longer a mere imitator, but a second monster, rapidly hatching, having perfectly inherited all of Satoru Gojo's insane traits. Satoru, what kind of monster have you been hiding at Jujutsu High? Suguru Geto's fingers gripping playful cloud turned white from excessive force. Satoru, is this the strongest? Even if I leave, can you create the next me, or even the next you? Yes, that's it. Geto, keep imagining, keep panicking. Mizuki Makoto mentally gave a thumbs up to this cult leader's associative abilities. For someone like Suguru Geto, who had once been infinitely close to the strongest, this familiarity became his greatest weakness. If such violence could be inherited, if Satoru Gojo had truly found a way to mass-produce these little monsters, then Suguru Geto's struggles over the past 10 years would truly become a complete joke. However, behind all this magnificent smoke and dust, the real Mizuki Makoto was about to fall apart. Only he knew that the forcibly fused Blue Rage from earlier was not some effortless miracle, but a desperate gamble that cost him everything. To simulate the imaginary mass, sufficient to deceive the eyes of a special grade, his originally sufficient cursed energy instantly dropped below the red line. The pressure on his brain was terrifying. His neurons now felt as if they had been doused with concentrated sulfuric acid. His vision was severely blurred, and the Suguru Geto before him had overlapped into a twisted, pitch-black blob. The only reason he could still maintain this arrogant posture with his hands in his pockets and his chin held high was purely because he was forcing himself to stay upright through the sheer spite of, "I am absolutely going to survive." This is a battle of wits comparable to Zhongli's Fool Death. As long as I don't fall, what you see will always be the abyss known as the strongest. Mizuki Makoto forcibly swallowed the sweet, bloody taste rising in his throat, keeping his mouth in that extremely punchable, mocking curve. Even if a gentle breeze could knock him over right now, as long as Suguru Geto didn't figure out the truth, that man would never dare to bet his life on it. Oh my, mister, why has your expression suddenly become so fascinating? Mizuki Makoto tilted his head, the dark red glow of the pseudo-blue rage at his fingertips still flickering in the ruins. This was actually because he was losing control of his cursed energy output, but in Suguru Geto's eyes, this was likely a death signal of, ready to launch a second strike at any moment. He wiped his forehead, which was covered in blood and sweat, his smile ferocious and manic. Hot tilde, are you wondering what this move is called? My teacher said this is a piece of extracurricular teaching material prepared specifically to prove the new era. As for the name, how about farewell to the past? He deliberately threw out a barbed piece of trash talk, precisely stabbing into the other party's lungs. If this is the extent of your pop quiz, then I've overestimated you, the former strongest. Why don't you take advantage of the time before my teacher flashes back to drag you away to write a self-reflection, and draft a mental note when my teacher returns and sees his mass-produced results beating you to a pulp? What pose should you use to exit so it's less embarrassing? I personally recommend the Dogeza. Current time, 11:53. Goal. Hold on for another 8 minutes and 7 seconds. Geto Suguru displayed unprecedented caution. He even subconsciously took half a step back, the rainbow dragon behind him emitting an uneasy low growl. He was waiting for Mizuki Makoto to fall into a weakened state after unleashing a big move of that caliber, or perhaps, guarding against the unreasonable second eruption from his opponent. Who? Mizuki Makoto took a long breath, forcibly suppressing the sweet, bloody taste surging up his throat. He raised his head and gave the esteemed cult leader a grin that was extremely arrogant and stained with blood. Geto-sama, the clearing is complete. Now, shall we chat about what comes next? Exactly how high do you intend to stick your butt up when you do your Dogeza? Don't worry, I'll take a nice photo of your pathetic state after 10 years and send it to Sister Shoko. Current time, 14 minutes 35 seconds. Objective. Hold on for another 5 minutes 25 seconds. Miguel. I'm begging you. Hurry up and let that white-haired lunatic back. My blue rage is a one-time move. If he comes at me again, I'll really explode like fireworks and not even a scrap will be left. Mizuki Makoto roared in his heart, nearly breaking down, but the expression on his face remained steady, as if victory was already in his grasp. It seems I've become too reliant on those family members. Geto Suguru's voice suddenly became extremely calm, a silence stripped of all emotion, leaving only the instinct to kill. He casually waved away the remaining cursed spirit mist around him, and from the wide sleeve of his kasaya, slowly drew out a dark red 3-section staff. Special grade cursed tool, Playful Cloud. It was an outlier among cursed tools, possessing no cursed technique, purely an amplifier of strength. When gripped in Geto Suguru's hand, the very air let out a groan of unbearable pressure. I messed up. Mizuki Makoto's heart pounded violently. That blue rage move had indeed intimidated his opponent, but it also made Geto Suguru realize, since long-range cursed spirits would be instantly wiped out, the only way to end the battle was the most primitive, most impossible to cheat method, special grade level brutal hand-to-hand combat. Before defecting, this man was a monster capable of sparring with Gojo Satoru and slaughtering special grade cursed spirits with his bare hands. That powerful reinforcement of cursed energy, the physical techniques honed on the edge of life and death, combined with the support of Playful Cloud, was purely a one-sided massacre for him, who couldn't even attend 3 physical education classes in a semester. Daddy Gojo. Help. This meatball-headed lunatic is going to use a 3-section staff to spin me into a top. Mizuki Makoto shrieked in his heart. Miguel. Did you already get twisted into a pretzel by the teacher in Shinjuku? Hurry up and make him come back. Whoosh. Without any warning, Geto Suguru vanished. It wasn't a cursed technique, but the instantaneous burst of a well-honed body reinforced by cursed energy. By the time Mizuki Makoto's dynamic vision caught the afterimage, the evil wind brought by Playful Cloud had already sliced off a lock of hair from his forehead. Ushuradan full power spatial orbit deflection. He didn't dare use Star Rage again. The defense of a single, limitless, was too rigid. Facing this kind of pure, violent pummeling, once the 3-second defense ended, having his internal organs shattered by the shockwaves was his only foreseeable future. Mizuki Makoto frantically manipulated the surrounding spatial frequency, as if laying down countless layers of invisible, soap bubbles, on the surface of his body. Clang, clang, clang. Every crisp impact was accompanied by a sharp pain in his brain. Too fast. Each strike weighed thousands of pounds, yet was as precise as a scalpel. Playful clouds struck the twisted spatial orbit, and the fatal direct hits were forcibly deflected by a few centimeters, grazing past his shoulder and instantly blasting the wall behind him into powder. This kind of spatial fluctuation interference. Gedo Suguru marveled chillingly while moving at high speed, a truly interesting struggle. Although the technique is refined, your physical fitness cannot keep up with your imagination at all. Spot on. Mizuki Makoto's brain was overclocking, his muscles screaming. Even though Ushor Adan deflected the attacks, the special-grade cursed energy shockwaves still passed through the space, shattering his web of his thumb and causing blood to drip through his fingers. Current time, 15:45. Objective. Hold on for another 4 minutes 15 seconds. Makoto-kun, you're trembling. Gedo Suguru closed in again, playful cloud dancing into a dark red boundary of death. There's probably about 4 minutes left until Gojo returns. How many times do you think your limitless, with its gaping holes, can block me? He saw through it. He knew Miguel couldn't hold out much longer, so he abandoned all flashy moves and returned to the simplest yet most lethal time squeeze, using his special grade cursed energy and cursed energy manipulation skills to bully the weak at the most fundamental level of a jujutsu sorcerer. 3 minutes left. Mizuki Makoto bit his back teeth, his mouth full of the taste of blood. If Gojo Satoru doesn't show up, I'll have to engrave a shameful last will on the tombstone at Jujutsu High like, died from domestic violence by Gojo's ex-husband. Mizuki-kun, your reaction has slowed down. Gedo Suguru's voice was as cold as ice sliding down a spine. The dark red arc of light fell, the suffocating pressure causing even the twisted space to make a crisp sound like shattering glass. Clang. Another heavy blow. Although he managed to shift the orbit, the overwhelming monstrous force still shattered the bones in his left hand through the space. Mizuki Makoto's brain emitted a sharp blast due to overload calculation. Daddy Gojo. If you don't come soon, you're really going to be attending my funeral. The kind where there's plenty of kikufuku. He couldn't let him get close anymore. Playing melee in front of a special grade was purely trading brains for the opponent's sweat. He stared fixedly at Gedo Suguru's left foot as he stepped forward again. That left foot was starting to exert force. It was the sign that the meatball-headed gorilla was about to attack. No, he couldn't hold it. He had to forcibly push this clingy ex-husband back to a safe distance. He only had one chance. Limitless logical switch. Blue, right pointing arrow. Red. Composite cursed technique construction. Red, repulsion plus, Ushor Adan, spatial fluctuation. This wasn't 1+1, this was shoving nuclear fuel into a powder keg. You like close-range communication so much, huh? Mizuki Makoto suddenly raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, and grinned ferociously. Too bad, I don't have that hobby of yours for zero-distance contact with the same romance, and seducing a minor is a crime, so, please roll further away. He didn't aim at Gedo Suguru, that would just waste his remaining cursed energy, and a special grade sorcerer's reaction speed could dodge any of his direct hits. What needed to be detonated was the space between them. Mizuki Makoto poured all his cursed energy into his fingertips. The Ushor Adan originally used for defense instantly reversed its fluctuation direction, and combined with the absolute repulsive force of red, forcibly created a rapidly expanding absolute space bubble between the two of them. Boom. That wasn't an explosion, but space itself rejecting the opponent's existence. The powerful repulsive force lifted the entire layer of the training ground's soil, like an invisible giant hand, slapping Gedo Suguru's chest hard. Even someone as strong as Gedo Suguru couldn't maintain his balance in the face of such close range, no blind spot repulsion. This is red. No, there's something else. Gedo Suguru's pupils shrank, and he turned into a dark red meteor, sent flying over 100 meters away, crashing through 3 stone towers in a row, and embedding himself deeply into the rock wall of the mountain behind. Who? Ha! Who? Grade 2 sorcerer Mizuki Makoto knelt on the ground, gasping for air, his vision filled with pitch-black blocks. It's already reached the limit, is it still not enough? That desperate Ashura red just now had drained almost his last drop of cursed energy. Current time, 1830. Objective. Hold on for another 1 minute 30 seconds. Hit him. With this kind of close-range spatial repulsion, even a special grade should quiet down for a while, right? However, what came from the dust and smoke wasn't a scream, but an extremely suppressed cold snort accompanied by the sound of grinding bones. Not bad force. Gedo Suguru slowly walked out of the rubble. His originally neat kasaya was already torn, his left arm hung limply, and the depression in his chest indicated he had broken at least 2 ribs. More fortunately, Playful Cloud was not in his hands. That special grade cursed tool had been directly blown away into the dense forest hundreds of meters away by the spatial repulsive force just now. But Mizuki Makoto didn't feel relieved. Because in Gedo Suguru's narrow eyes, the murderous intent had become so thick it was almost tangible. Gedo Suguru stared at him as if looking at a monster that had shamed him. If you had truly mastered the essence of Gojo, at that moment just now, you should have followed up with blue, to crush my internal organs, or used teleportation to cut into my blind spot. Every step Gedo Suguru took, cracks appeared in the ground beneath his feet, but you didn't. You just stood there gasping. It seems that red move was already your limit. I overplayed it. This battle-hardened special grade saw through the reality at a glance, without the stamina, cursed energy, and precision of Gojo Satoru's infinite combo. That blow just now was a desperate gamble. Since you've already used up all your trump cards. Gedo Suguru put his hands together, and the cursed energy fluctuation around him was even more violent than before. That was true, reckless special grade output. Maximum technique, Uzumaki. This time, there was no testing. He instantly compressed all the remaining cursed spirits around him, and that black-purple energy ball took shape in front of his chest, the distorted gravity it brought even uprooting the surrounding trees. Deadline. 1915-2000. Mizuki Makoto watched that destructive black light about to pierce the air, his fingers trembling as he made a phantom grasp. Teacher. If you don't come soon, I'm really going to engrave a fastest death record at Jujutsu High. Second limitless defense duration, 3 seconds activated. Third limitless defense duration, 3 seconds preparing. Boom. The black torrent instantly submerged him. That was pure, no blind spot violent crushing. Mizuki Makoto tried his best to maintain Ashura Dan, attempting to guide the energy to both sides. 3 seconds. The first line of defense collapsed. It's not over yet. He let out a beast-like roar, forcibly overdrawing his life to open the final defense. Last 3 seconds. The black energy was frantically rubbing less than a centimeter from the tip of his nose, his eyeballs were temporarily blinded due to blood congestion, and the ear-piercing sound was about to tear his soul apart. Just as the cursed technique defense shattered like a candle in the wind. A cyan blue light, more dazzling, more arrogant, and more unreasonable than Uzumaki, descended from the sky. Gedo, bullying my student is going to get you forcibly expelled. All darkness was erased by a higher-level gravitational force in an instant. A white-haired man with a blindfold appeared out of thin air in front of him, and with a casual wave, the residual energy wave capable of destroying Jujutsu High disappeared completely like a turned-off faucet. Mizuki Makoto finally couldn't hold on, falling backward in exhaustion, but was steadily caught by a large hand supporting the back of his head. Makoto-kun, you performed even more unruly than I imagined. Gojo Satoru looked down at him, the corner of his mouth, which had a red mark as if whipped by a lash, curled up in a cruel and excited arc. To be able to fight Gedo to this extent alone, your homework was completed too brilliantly. Current time, 2000. Speed run completed. Gojo Satoru turned around, facing Gedo Suguru, who had a drastic change in expression not far away, and slowly pulled down his blindfold. Sorry, Chang. The rest is time for old friends to catch up. When I woke up, the world was a blinding, near void white. Sunlight pierced through the thin white curtains of the Jujutsu High infirmary, like countless tiny silver needles piercing precisely into Mizuki Makoto's eyeballs. He tried to move his fingers, but it felt like trying to drive an old truck that had been scrapped for 30 years. Every muscle in his body ached as if 10 aoi to-dos had taken turns running a steamroller over him, and his joints felt stuffed with rusted iron filings. Especially his brain. If last night's battle was a graphics card overheating, then Mizuki Makoto's skull was currently hosting a carnival called the Suguru Ghetto Brawl. 1,000 versions of the bun-haired cult leader were swinging the three-section staff, pole dancing on his neurons. Every time they jumped, his temples would throb along with the beat. Hiss. Mizuki Makoto let out a weak moan, feeling as if a lump of dry lime had been stuffed into his throat. Yo, awake. 2 hours earlier than I expected. Makoto-kun's vitality is truly as tenacious as a cockroach's, it's astonishing. An extremely light-hearted, almost provocative voice reached his ears. He turned his head with great effort, his vision gradually focusing. Satoru Gojo was sitting boldly in front of his hospital bed. He wasn't wearing his signature black blindfold today, just a pair of sunglasses hanging loosely, and those pale blue, six eyes, as clear as Arctic glaciers, flowed with a profound light and shadow in the sunlight that made them impossible to read. At this moment, the strongest sorcerer was sitting with his legs crossed, completely lacking any decorum, holding a kikufuku in his hand, chewing it with an extremely devout expression, cream even staining the corner of his mouth. In the infirmary, the rich smell of disinfectant mixed with the overly expensive aroma of sweets, creating an incredibly magical atmosphere. Where is Suguru Ghetto? Mizuki Makoto spoke, his voice so hoarse it sounded like it had been sanded down with sandpaper, sounding foreign even to himself. Hearing that name, Satoru Gojo's chewing of the kikufuku paused slightly. He remained silent for a moment, then turned his head to look out the window. Bursts of busy shouting came from the playground, as assistant supervisors were cleaning up the aftermath of the night parade of 100 demons. His profile looked somewhat cold in the light and shadow, and his tone was as flat as if he were describing a complete stranger. He escaped. The official record I gave to the higher-ups is that he has been executed by me. Before leaving, he asked about the situation of those family members, and after hearing they had all retreated safely, he walked into the shadows without another word. He turned his head, a rare trace of seriousness in his blue eyes behind the sunglasses, and even a hint of intangible apology. Sorry, Mizuki. As a teacher, I failed to take revenge for my injured student. Because of some indescribable private feelings, I personally let that extremely dangerous special grade criminal go. This is very unfair to you, right? Ha. Teacher, the way you apologize really gives me goosebumps. Mizuki Makoto laughed at himself, trying to squeeze out a mocking expression, but accidentally tugged at the wounds on his face, wincing in pain. That kind of monster, even for you, it would take some effort to finish him off without leveling the school. Besides, if you really killed him, wouldn't I have absolutely no material left for drawing Gojo Mai, widowhood arc close double angle bracket in the future? For the sake of artistic diversity in the doujinshi world, it's better for him to stay alive and kicking. Satoru Gojo was stunned for a moment, seemingly not expecting this reaction from his student. Immediately, he seemed to be poked at some funny point, bursting into a laugh that completely lacked any image. Ha 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 ha. As expected of you, Cheng. At a time like this, you're still worrying about the serialization progress of your fan comics. While laughing, he reached out and ruffled his disciple's hair. The action was rarely without its usual joking roughness, instead revealing a hint of elder-like tenderness. As compensation for you risking your life to hold him off, take this. He casually picked up a heavy, dark red object emitting a certain fierce aura from the shadows beside the hospital bed. It was the special grade curse tool that had once danced like a storm in Suguru Ghetto's hands, almost spinning Mizuki Makoto, this fragile, little matchstick, into a top on the spot, playful cloud. Something Ghetto left behind. Since it's the fruit of battle you risked your life to drag out of his hands, this thing naturally belongs to you. Satoru Gojo tossed it casually onto his quilt, making a heavy thud. This is the only special grade cursed tool based purely on physical strength, you know. If you take it to sell, the money would be enough for you to lie flat and draw fan comics for the rest of your life, maybe even have Miss May May hand you the manuscript paper. 5 minutes later. Hiss. Ouch, 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 ouch. I'm dying. I'm really dying. Mizuki Makoto covered his swollen forehead, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the three-section red staff in his hand, wishing he could throw it directly out the window. Give it up, Makoto-kun. Creatures like physical combat idiots can't master high-difficulty weapons like a three-section staff. Satoru Gojo sat on a chair nearby, laughing so hard he almost fell off, the half-eaten kikufuku in his hand trembling. This thing is simply the nemesis of my life. Mizuki Makoto had wanted to simulate Suguru Geto's majestic and dashing posture in his mind, fantasizing that he could also dance out an impenetrable afterimage. However, the reality was that as a physical combat idiot with only 5 points in athletic ability, on par with Kasumi Miwa and someone who skipped gym class every day, the moment he tried to swing it, the first 2 times it accurately whipped his own left elbow and right wrist. When he gritted his teeth and tried to complete the third, sweeping thousands of troops, this cursed stick seemed to have a consciousness of its own, drawing a bizarre arc in the air, bypassing Mizuki Makoto's block, and with a direct bang, precisely struck his cheek. I don't want this thing that only knows how to beat its owner. It must be a curse left by Suguru Geto, absolutely. Mizuki Makoto gritted his teeth, carrying Playful Cloud, and limped out of the infirmary. Satoru Gojo was still shouting something behind him like, "Are you really not considering practicing more?" But he didn't even turn his head, simply giving him the middle finger. When he walked to the old tree at the school gate, Mizuki Makoto saw Maki. She was leaning against the tree trunk, wrapped in quite a few bandages, holding a broken wooden stick in her hand. Seeing the huge red swelling on his forehead caused by Playful Cloud's sneak attack, her expression became extremely complex, a mix of pity, confusion, and a realization that, this guy really is an idiot. Here, this is your reward. Without any nonsense, he shoved the heavy and violent dark red three-section staff into her arms. Maki froze completely. As a cursed tool user, she couldn't possibly fail to recognize the value of this thing. The pressure belonging to a special grade cursed tool made the surrounding air feel a few degrees heavier. Scum, are you crazy? She widened her eyes, staring dead at the heavy object in her arms. This is a special grade cursed tool. Do you have any idea how much this thing would sell for? This is a trophy you earned with your life, I can't take it. Take it, Maki-chan. Mizuki Makoto waved his hand somewhat exhaustedly and turned to walk towards the playground, his back looking even with a bit of detachment that treated money like dirt, although the real reason was that I was just whipped by it so painfully. This stick and I don't get along. Just a moment ago, it even tried to assassinate its new master to become the Elder Wand of the Jujutsu world. In this school, only a muscle monster like you, Maki-chan, could make it look like a proper weapon, rather than some torture device for self-harm. Maki opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to refuse. But when her fingertips touched the cold and powerful staff body, the resonance made her unable to push it away in the end. She watched Mizuki Makoto's gradually receding back and muttered in the wind, "Thanks, you infuriating pervert scum." A week later, on the Jujutsu High playground, the sunset had already dyed everything a warm orange red. Yuta Okatsu stood in the center, his figure appearing somewhat thin in the golden afterglow, and also somewhat unprecedentedly relaxed. With the final completion of the curse-breaking procedure, the terrifying and massive curse queen that had originally been coiled behind him, enough to give all jujutsu sorcerers nightmares, was peeling off that hideous shell bit by bit. The black cursed energy mist retreated like a tide, revealing not claws and fangs, but a little girl wearing a white dress, her smile as pure as the first snow. Rika Orimoto. I'm sorry. Rika. I'm sorry. Yuta knelt on the ground, sobbing, tears glistening in the golden sunlight. Yuta, don't apologize. Rika hugged his neck gently and softly, her figure becoming transparent, turning into countless crystal light spots. In the days to come, Yuta must live happily too. Don't come to find me too early, Yuta. Under everyone's gaze, that cursed, pure love that had entangled the boy for 6 years finally turned into fireflies filling the sky, rising along with the warm wind toward the clear blue sky. Mizuki Makoto leaned against the rusty railing of the bleachers, unconsciously flipping through the tattered notebook that recorded his countless, fake, and escape experiences. On the distant playground, Panda was being chased all over the ground by Inamaki for being too excessive with his jokes. Maki-chan was seriously testing the newly acquired playful cloud in the open space, every swing bringing a thunderous sound of breaking air. Satoru Gojo was standing on the highest roof, making a childish V sign at the red clouds filling the sky. Watching this scene, my heart, which had been hanging in my throat and beating hotly from overexertion, finally slowly fell back into my chest. It succeeded, he said to himself silently in his heart. There is a secret I have never mentioned to anyone, not even daring to leave a word in that so-called notebook. According to the original predetermined track called Tragedy, Suguru Geto should have died in that dark alley, at the hands of his only best friend. Then, his corpse would become the breeding ground for that 1,000-year-old brain called Kenjaku, and a year later in Shibuya, in that noisy subway, become the most fatal catnip to seal Satoru Gojo. That is the starting point of all despair, the prologue called Collapse. But now, the man who should have withered in the snow, with all his wretchedness and unfinished great cause, walked into the shadows and lived in some corner of this world. Suguru Geto is not dead. I looked up at the back of the white-haired man on the roof, a flash of relief that even I felt was sentimental in my eyes. As long as Suguru Geto is still alive, that 1,000-year-old brain cannot take his body and cursed spirit manipulation. White-haired geezer, this way you won't be controlled by that bloody catnip again, and then be stuffed into that dark prison realm, cat cage like a stupid cat, right? Mizuki Makoto reopened the notebook, and at the end of that tactical summary about how to scare away special grade sorcerers by pretending to be Gojo Satoru number 2, beneath the messy doodles, he picked up his pen and wrote the final paragraph of this journey. The so-called curse is essentially the heaviest and most hopeless love left by humans in this world. But looking at this group of idiots, I suddenly feel that this absurd world might still have a little room for something called gentleness. Then, offering the most unreliable blessing to this world full of curses. I closed the notebook, and in my ears was the sound of Yuta crying and laughing. The smoke of the night parade of 100 demons has dissipated, and the ruins of Kyoto and Shinjuku will eventually be rebuilt. And I, Mizuki Makoto, the greatest liar and artist in the history of Jujutsu High, my story seems to have just turned to its most exciting and outrageous page. After all, the white-haired geezer seemed to be muttering just now that among the next first-year students, there's a brat named Fushiguro Megumi who seems like he will be interesting. Hey, looks like I still have to continue preparing a new script. After all, having smashed one cat cage, who knows if there will be an even more outrageous dog cage later on. I looked up at the purified blue sky and revealed a long-lost smile that no longer carried any color of deception. Volume 1, Night Parade of 100 Demons Arc, End. Extra 1. Before the gears turn. Tokyo Jujutsu High, the long corridor leading to the first-year classroom. Mizuki Makoto leaned against a vermilion pillar, boredly tossing a coin whose pattern was almost worn away. Before that heavy cursed energy, capable of freezing the air, drew near, he had already caught the scent of trouble. Oh my, Mizuki, are you actually here to pick me up early? I'm so touched, teacher is. Satoru Gojo's light-hearted tone came from around the corner. Immediately after, the boy wearing the white school uniform, with dark circles under his eyes, looking as if he might collapse from anemia at any moment, shrank behind the white-haired giant like a startled deer. Yuta, This is Mizuki Makoto, the one I told you about. Satoru Gojo patted the boy's shoulder. He's a senior with a very cheerful personality. Mizuki-kun, hello. I am Yuta Okatsu. Mizuki pushed up the monocle on the bridge of his nose, ignoring the boy's greeting, and instead wore an extremely grave expression, carrying 3 parts pity and 7 parts despair. Yuta-kun, is it? I suggest you turn around right now, run out of the school gate, and perhaps you can still save the rest of your life and your lower body. Yuta Okatsu froze. He let out a long sigh, walked to Yuta's side, and lowered his voice, feigning mystery. Since you've already stepped through this door, as your senior, I have an obligation to tell you the truth. Those 3 new classmates of yours are all monsters, in the literal sense. Mizuki Makoto extended a finger and began his insane fabrication. First is the woman named Maki Zenin. She is the exiled martial arts faction of the Zenin family, known as the Asura Princess. She hates boys with delicate features the most. Last time, a transfer student just happened to step with his left foot first while walking, and he was almost dismantled by her using a cursed tool to rip out his ribs to use as an instrument. In the end, he was carried sideways into Shoko's office. Yuta Okatsu's face turned a shade paler, and his Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty. Then there's that panda. He shook his head, his tone even more horrifying. Don't be fooled by its cute appearance, it is essentially a beast in panda skin. It has a strange habit. When it's hungry, it loves to eat kids like you who look weak and have tender meat. Half of the ash pit behind the school is made up of its leftovers. Yuta's legs were already trembling. Finally, there's Toge Inamaki. He's the descendant of cursed speech users. He kills the moment he opens his mouth. He doesn't usually speak because if he says the word, die, nothing grows within 100 meters. His favorite pastime is using cursed speech to make people pole dance until they're dehydrated. Mizuki patted Yuta's shoulder, his tone sincere enough to win an Oscar. Oh my, Yuta-kun, seeing how pure and kind you are, I'm really worried you won't survive the night. Satoru Gojo squatted to the side, watching his straight-faced but entirely truthful nonsense, the corners of his eyes behind his sunglasses twitching wildly. He was on the verge of a breakdown, wanting to laugh but having to hold it in. Hey, Maki almost dismantled your ribs, wasn't that because you insisted on calling her Maki-chan, and tried to touch her abs? And that kid with tender meat, that refers to those high-grade chicks you tricked Panda into stealing and roasting with you last time, right? As for Inamaki, inducing a pure cursed speech user to shout, strip, at Panda, just to satisfy your perverted curiosity about the structure of a cursed corpse. How on earth do you have the nerve to frame others for this with such a straight face? He took a deep breath, looking at Yuta's face that was about to shatter, and secretly curled his lips into a Mizuki Makoto style smile. Is this for real, this kid? Could it be that back then, in the eyes of Utahime and Shoko, as well as Nanami and Haibara, I was just as much of a scumbag? Thus, when Yuta Okatsu stepped into the classroom with this persecution complex that, the whole world is out to get me, the plot naturally went off the rails. Because Mizuki Makoto had planted the seeds of fear in Yuta's heart beforehand, Rika, who was behind him, also received intense sensory stimulation. No. Rika, they will kill me. I will be eaten. Yuta held his head, whispering in despair. Don't bully Yuta. The queen of curses, Rika Orimoto's violent grudge energy exploded instantly. Originally, Maki, Panda, and Inamaki had only chosen to test defensively because they felt Rika's threat, but in Rika's eyes, these 3 guys completely fit the descriptions of violent woman, man-eating beast, and curse killer that Mizuki Makoto had described. Thus, the welcome ceremony, which was supposed to be light, turned into a one-sided renovation project. Boom. 2 minutes later, Mizuki Makoto slowly pushed open the classroom door. The classroom was in a mess, and the blackboard was shattered to pieces. And on the high ceiling beams, 3 familiar figures were posed in an extremely artistic manner. Maki's long staff had been twisted into a pretzel by Rika and used as a rope to bind her tightly to the ceiling beam. Panda had been twisted into a ball by cursed energy, dangling back and forth like a plush keychain. And Toge Inamaki had his mouth taped shut by Rika with tape from who knows where, hanging upside down from the ceiling fan blades, rotating 360 degrees in a very rhythmic fashion as the blades turned. Benito Flakes, help me. Inamaki's voice sounded filled with a desperate sense of dizziness. Oh my, this is truly tragic. Mizuki Makoto stood in the center of the ruins. Instead of saving them immediately, he pulled out the latest model smartphone from his pocket, adjusted the angle, and began taking continuous shots of the three works of art on the ceiling from all angles. Panda, turn a little to the left. Yes, this angle captures your desperate expression. Maki, don't glare at me. If this photo is posted on the school forum, it could sell for at least 20,000 yen each. As he pressed the shutter, he gave a thumbs up to Yuta Okatsu, who was still trembling and apologizing in the corner. Well done, Yuta. See, I was right, wasn't I? They are indeed very enthusiastic. Look, they're even playing these high-altitude acrobatics with you. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to. Yuta said with a mournful face. Satoru Gojo poked his head out from behind the door, watching the three students swaying in the wind on the ceiling, who were about to throw up, and then looked at Mizuki, who was busy editing photos to post on Twitter, and sighed deeply. Makoto-kun, although I, as a teacher, like lively things, isn't this kind of welcome ceremony a little bit beyond the baseline of human morality? Mizuki Makoto swiped the screen without looking up. Teacher, this is called deepening the bond. By the way, do you want a copy of this photo of Panda on the fan? Only 1,000 yen, copyright shared. Satoru Gojo was silent for 3 seconds, then decisively pulled out his wallet. Deal. Remember to send me a high-definition original as well. From the ceiling came Maki's hysterical roar. Mizuki Makoto. When I get down, I'm going to chop you up and feed you to the fish, ah. He smiled, casually tapped send, and then elegantly exited the classroom. Oh my, another day filled with camaraderie. So-called choices are actually just a gamble between turning left or turning right. Mizuki Makoto lay on the playground grass, gazing up at Tokyo's sky, which was so white it felt void, the taste of blood still lingering in his mouth that he hadn't managed to spit out, his brain trapped in a sort of philosophical system crash. But for me, there are only two choices right now. Either play dead on the ground, or get picked up by Gojo-sensei and beaten with another combo. Some time had passed since the night parade of 100 demons that shocked the world. The smoke in Shinjuku had cleared, the ruins of Jujutsu High had been mostly repaired, and even that book, Gojo Mai, Widowed Edition Close Double-Angle Bracket, had sold out in the doujin circles. The world seemed to be returning to normal. Except for a certain suicide note that shouldn't have appeared. Just a few days ago, Gojo-sensei opened a letter with a blank sender name that emitted a faint scent of a man bun. It was an extremely irresponsible letter, one even carrying a touch of pretentious artistic youth, that Gai Suguru Geto had actually decided, after being roasted to the point of breaking down by me, to lay down his position as cult leader and go find himself. In the letter, he wrote that he was heading south to see those islands without cursed spirits, and to ponder other possibilities besides killing all the monkeys. Of course, he didn't forget to skillfully guilt-trip his former best friend at the end. Satoru, I leave my family in your care, especially those two children. After all, I'm now an unemployed vagrant without even a pension. Satoru Gojo stared at the letter for a full half hour, finally revealing an extremely punchable smile, then casually crumpled the letter into a ball and stuffed it into the trash can. It seems Geto has reached his rebellious phase too. That man commented as such. Therefore, to celebrate his best friend's rebirth, and to reward the students who performed excellently during the night parade of 100 demons, Gojo-sensei decided to give us extra training. Makoto-kun, Yuta, Kinji, come take a little class. That was the beginning of hell. Originally, Mizuki Makoto had walked onto the training ground with a very simple, and even slightly pink-tinted, mood, because he was walking with Maki at the time. Can Maki-chan actually participate in this kind of special training? He had thought naively at the time, rubbing his chin, could it be that Sensei finally had a change of heart and is going to give Maki-chan a cheat code? Without any preparation, Mizuki Makoto thought it was just a routine sparring session like always. Until he saw Kinji Hikari's face, which was plastered with, good luck, and Maki and Karara Hoshi standing on the sidelines with their arms crossed, their eyes filled with a hint of pity that said, rest in peace. As it turned out, Maki and Karara Hoshi were indeed here to participate in the class. They were responsible for watching. And, after the special training ended, for shoveling Mizuki Makoto, this lump of soulless rotten meat, off the ground. Makoto-kun, don't zone out. Although your drawing speed for doujinshi is very fast, your reaction speed in the eyes of a special grade jujutsu sorcerer doesn't even qualify as slow motion. Satoru Gojo smiled and removed his blindfold. That flash of pale blue appeared exceptionally cold in the sunlight. The next 10 minutes were a pure nightmare for a normal person. Kinji Hikari and Yuta Okatsu, those two animals, one has near infinite cursed energy to maintain physical strength at any time, and the other has already touched the threshold of reverse cursed technique. Get a rib broken and he can fix it in a turn, get a tooth knocked out and he can grow it back just by closing his mouth. But what about me? I am just a grade 2 jujutsu sorcerer who plays drift in space relying on a knockoff Ushoridan, with maxed out defense but an extremely thin health bar. I don't have a cheat plug-in like reverse curse technique. Bang! Satoru Gojo's uppercut slammed heavily into Mizuki Makoto's abdomen. Although I had used Ushoridan at the critical moment to distort space and diffuse 90% of the force, the remaining 10% still made me feel like I had been hit head-on by a speeding wild boar. My internal organs were churning, and the bowl of ramen one ate for lunch felt like it was trying to rush out of my throat. Hoo-ha! Mizuki Makoto curled up on the ground like a boiled shrimp, vomiting stomach acid and saliva. Physiological tears blurred his vision. This sense of blankness, as if his brain had been physically emptied, made him unable to even remember which page of his doujinshi he had drawn up to. Oh my, down again. Satoru Gojo stopped, standing 3 steps away, tilting his head with an innocent expression. Makoto-kun, I didn't use cursed energy reinforcement this time. Could it be because you've been too tired drawing household affairs recently, leading to weak waist strength? Oh my, young people need to know how to exercise restraint. Nonsense. You definitely added force. This is definitely a personal vendetta for me drawing you like that. Although I have no evidence, I bet that punch just now had at least 10 years of kung fu and 500 kilograms of resentment in it. You're not training students at all. You're executing the doujin artist who draws you. Tisk, fainted again. Maki's cold yet somewhat familiar tone of disgust sounded in his ear. Immediately after, a familiar yet unquestionable force suddenly wrapped around Mizuki Makoto's body. It wasn't a gentle support like Okatsu's, nor was it a fuzzy embrace like Panda's. It was a pair of arms filled with bandages and thin calluses, possessing great explosive power, lifting his entire body horizontally from that lawn full of vomit and sweat in an extremely efficient manner, almost like carrying some heavy spoils of war. Yes, it was the legendary Princess Carrie. Mizuki Makoto felt a pair of strong arms wrap under his armpits, lifting him from that lawn full of vomit and sweat. Maki skillfully held him in her arms, her movements as efficient as carrying a sack of rice. Mizuki, if your frequency of getting beaten for 10 minutes, unconscious for 2 hours every day were written into school history, it would definitely become the most embarrassing record in the history of Jujutsu High. As she spoke, she patted his dusty cheeks. Mizuki Makoto struggled to open one eye, looking at Maki's heroic profile, and exhaled weakly. Maki-chan, next time, could you discuss with Sensei, to switch to a gentler way of taking revenge, for example, just have him confiscate my drawing pen. Do you think that's possible? Since when has that blindfolded jerk ever listened to anyone else's opinion? Maki snorted, shifting him upwards. Karara Hoshi, help me grab his notebook. If this guy dies here and the next issue of Gojo my close double angle bracket stops updating, Inamaki will be sad. Mizuki Makoto closed his eyes completely, letting his consciousness slip into darkness. In the last second before losing consciousness, he was still thinking. Geto, who is heading south, and Yuta, who is heading north, will both eventually find their answers. And for a guy like me who's been beaten until I can't tell north from south, the only answer seems to be, Satoru Gojo, you narrow-minded strongest, you definitely added force. Running away isn't cowardice, it's an extremely high-level tactical loss mitigation strategy. Mizuki Makoto stood on a heavily concealed path behind the Jujutsu High campus, his backpack stuffed with local specialties, notebooks, and 3 sets of spare clothes, conducting his final mental preparation as the first light of dawn broke. I've been planning this for 48 hours straight, it has to work. Whoever wants to stay at Tokyo Jujutsu High can go right ahead. That high-intensity, masochistic lifestyle of 10 minutes of training, a whole day of passing out and vomiting, has completely violated my life creed as an artist. If I keep getting beaten like this, my brain will turn into tofu under Gojo Satoru's fist long before I can finish the final chapter of Gojo Mai. Taking advantage of that scumbag teacher taking the twin sisters Mimiko and Nanako, left behind by Geto Suguru to Principal Yaga to handle their enrollment paperwork today, he decisively chose to run away. Direction: south. Target: Kyoto Jujutsu High. Why run? Besides Mizuki Makoto wanting to keep his own life, which hadn't yet passed its expiration date, there were 3 core reasons. First, it was about that fool, despair-inducing bottleneck in his strength. In the world of Jujutsu sorcerers, strength is fundamentally determined by 5 dimensions: cursed energy manipulation, cursed technique precision, barrier techniques, and that physical combat he loathed so much. For a transmigrator, other than physical combat which could be barely improved through acquired training, being brutally beaten by Gojo Satoru, the other options were practically etched into his DNA the moment he was born. Especially cursed energy. Although the limitless cursed technique has a certain uniqueness, allowing one to plunder cursed energy through cognition and indirectly raise the upper limit. Lately, because of the material Sister Shoko provided regarding the past events of Geto Suguru's departure, I've squandered almost all of it on that deep, heartbreaking, female-oriented adult novel titled Bitter Summer. The result was that his cursed energy was completely stuck at the awkward level of semi-grade 1. It's like a computer with decent performance. Even though the graphics card can run many AAA titles, various cursed technique combinations, the power supply cursed energy wattage just refuses to go up. Once he activates a major move like overclocking, Blue Rage, the entire system crashes instantly. Second, Gojo Satoru's extremely abstract level of teaching. If normal teaching is the entry-level tutorial of a MOBA game, then Gojo Satoru's teaching is the tutorial for Shikiro. This is an attack, this is a defense, this is a Shinet Gojo Genichiro, alright, you've learned it, now go out there and smash your skull against the fist of the strongest modern Jujutsu sorcerer. Kusakabe, the laziest teacher at Jujutsu High, once commented, that fool Gojo Satoru can do anything, but expecting him to teach others is just a pipe dream. Geniuses cannot understand mortals. In Gojo Satoru's eyes, things like barrier techniques, cursed energy manipulation, and cursed technique precision are just passive skills that you can max out instantly as long as you have hands and a brain, right? In his view, the only thing that requires effort is physical combat. Mizuki Makoto strongly suspects that the reason this white-haired geezer has such a pathological obsession with physical combat is because when he was a high school girl, he was brutally tortured by that first sorcerer killer, Fushiguro Toji. The psychological trauma of being rubbed into the ground by pure violence was clearly transformed by him into a kind of brutal beating called education of love, which he then returned upon his group of innocent students. Of course, he had also tried to take shortcuts. For instance, last week, Mizuki Makoto had a sudden thought. Since echo mimicry could imitate Star Rage and Ushor Adan to a certain extent, imitating his good brother Inamaki's cursed speech shouldn't be a problem either. To have a chance to end this inhumane training, he took advantage of a moment when Gojo Satoru looked relaxed, focused his energy, put on a solemn look, and unleashed a roar from the depths of his soul at him. Get the runs. In that instant, Gojo Satoru's smile froze. The strongest of the modern era, resounding through Tokyo with soup and water, no such luck. And he, Mizuki Makoto, a second later, the moment the word, eat, barely left his mouth, felt as if his chest had been crushed by 100 Shinkansen trains colliding with him at once, and a wave of metallic-tasting liquid sprayed out. His whole body, like a shot put being launched, whistled through the air and embedded itself precisely into the thickened load-bearing wall of the training ground. According to Karara Hoshi and Maki-chan's recollection afterwards, they spent a whole hour that day with crowbars, chipping away at the wall, before they could extract Mizuki Makoto in one piece from that pile of shattered bricks and mortar. And the culprit behind that cursed energy backlash was just elegantly clutching his stomach, emitting a sinister laugh at his beloved disciple, hanging on the wall. Mizuki, this kind of dimensional reduction strike on a personality level is creative, but for your skinny arms and legs, it's a bit too avant-garde. At that moment, Mizuki Makoto understood. If you succeed, it's a revolution. If you fail, it's treason. This is the reason why I get beaten until I can't tell north from south every day. He might even think he's helping me polish my body, but I suspect he's just simply taking revenge on me for drawing his doujinshi. Third, and the most important reason, I need new material. Since Limitless can't be exploited for any more wool from Gojo Satoru for the time being, I have to find another special grade to mess with. Looking at the world, excluding the shame of the special grades who pollutes the card pool, Geto Suguru, there are only 3 people who can count as special grade material now. Gojo Satoru has been temporarily exploited dry. Yuta Okatsu's information is too public, everyone knows him well, making it hard to fabricate the kind of high-end rumors that people would believe without doubt. So, the only choice remaining is one person. The oldest crossed-out, earliest special grade Jujutsu sorcerer, the number 1 class skipper in the Jujutsu world, the lazy sister who has been running away and unseen for 20 years, Yuki Tsukumo. Because she has been hiding for years, everyone's understanding of her is almost blank. In this situation, as long as I can get even a tiny bit of real, detailed material, as long as I can make her part of my Limitless Techniques database, the power of the rumors I fabricate will increase exponentially. My strength will definitely see a tenfold, or even ninefold, leap. As a transmigrator, Mizuki Makoto possesses a top-secret piece of information. His brother from another mother, whom he has never met but who radiates the same kind of perverted aura, Aoi Todo at Kyoto Jujutsu High, is exactly the closed-door disciple of Yuki Tsukumo. If you ask who knows that elusive woman best, in the whole world, there is no one but him. Tsukumo Yuki. Actually, you can't see her head either. Semi-grade 1. Sounds nice, but in front of that white-haired geezer, it's just the difference between 1 punch and 2. White-haired geezer. I lied, it's actually always 1 punch. Mizuki Makoto smiled bitterly and tightened the straps of his backpack. To break this bottleneck, Tokyo Jujutsu High can't give me any more surprises. After all, besides Gojo Satoru, the Jujutsu High teacher who only knows physical exorcism, there is only Kinji Hikari who also only knows physical exorcism. Their teaching style is only one. As long as it doesn't kill you, beat you to death. What's more critical is, Teacher Gojo's hand can't reach every locker room, crossed out every training room at Kyoto Jujutsu High, at least for now. Goodbye, Teacher Gojo. Goodbye, Maki-chan's arms, full of power. Mizuki Makoto looked back at the Jujutsu High School buildings nestled in the greenery, a heroic feeling rising in his heart, reminiscent of the wind blowing mournfully at the Yi River. I haven't really defected. I just left a leave request note under my pillow in the dorm with a very personal style. Due to artistic inspiration drying up from long-term training, I have decided to go to Kyoto for an indefinite period of folk custom field research. P.S. Teacher Gojo, please do not try to flash over and catch me, otherwise, the cover of the next issue of Gojo Mai might feature you in Principal Yaga's cursed corpse. That is a certain unspeakable, heavy taste domain. Ah, with Teacher Gojo's extremely protective and lazy personality, seeing this threatening note, he should generously give me a few days off, right? Probably. Mizuki Makoto lowered the brim of his hat and squeezed into the Shinkansen heading to Kyoto. Aoi Toto, my good brother, hurry up and hand over all that unspeakable information about your master. Current time, 9:15. Location, Tokaido Shinkansen. Goal, before being dragged back, finish wreaking havoc on Kyoto Jujutsu High. So-called freedom is never without a price. In the jujutsu world, the price of freedom usually includes a large sum of money and a painful memory of lost dignity. Mizuki Makoto sat on the Shinkansen heading to Kyoto, clutching the crumpled letter of recommendation tightly in his hand. The rapidly receding scenery outside the window gave him the illusion of escaping alive, but in his mind, he could only see the lazy, scum-filled face of Ieri Shoko. To get this piece of paper, he hadn't just emptied half a year's royalties to buy Shoko a limited edition luxury eye cream. He had also signed a week-long, maddeningly insane, medical waste transport contract. What was even more tragic was that whenever Gojo Satoru barged into the infirmary like a giant white-haired cat, carrying a bag of cloyingly sweet kikufuku to find someone to test his medicine on, Mizuki Makoto had to step up. He had to embrace the resolve of certain death, spreading his arms like a lackey to block that wave of high-sugar biochemical attack, shouting hoarsely, "Teacher! Let me handle this trifle. Sister Shoko is currently taking a great nap that concerns the future of humanity, no one is allowed to disturb her." Shoko blew a contemptuous smoke ring onto the letterhead bearing the official stamp of Jujutsu High and wrote with a flourish. "Utahime, this is my newly acquired mobile ashtray. Although his brain isn't very good, his ability to take a beating is first class, and he is extremely skilled at dealing with that white-haired trouble. Borrow him to play with for a few days, no need to compensate if you break him." Carrying this indenture, obtained by selling his soul, Mizuki Makoto stepped onto this ancient land, harboring a longing for beauty and freedom. The style of Kyoto Jujutsu High was completely different from Tokyo. Everywhere here exuded a sense of antiquity that was old, oppressive, and strictly disciplined. The wooden corridors emitted a scent of decaying wood, and even the air was permeated with the smell of old antiques. Just as Mizuki Makoto stepped into the school gate, before he could sigh at the cultural heritage, a cold, air-tearing gunshot whistled past his hair. Bang! The bullseye 100 meters away was instantly pierced. A girl with neat short hair, 7 parts similar to Maki Zenin in features but with a more gloomy and twisted temperament, slowly turned her head. Zenin Mai. She was holding the smoking revolver steadily, her eyes scanning back and forth between the letter of recommendation and Mizuki Makoto's slightly thin face, finally revealing a hint of malicious sarcasm. "Someone from Tokyo Jujutsu High. Has that trash Maki really fallen to the point of having classmates like this salted fish who could be killed with one punch?" Mizuki Makoto felt the near-tangible hostility. As a veteran doujinshi artist, he instantly understood the subtext in her eyes, a story called Love and Hate Between Sisters. You are someone by Maki's side, you are with the her I want to see but cannot, therefore, I hate you. It's my Chan. Although Maki-chan is indeed quite trashy, at least in terms of being doujinshi material. Mizuki Makoto pushed up his glasses and activated limitless mode without changing his expression. But when it comes to caring for her sister, she has complained to me many times. Topics like, will some stupid sister at Kyoto Jujutsu High get bullied for being too weak? Although she always ends it with, it'd be better if that guy died. That Tsunere tone is really suitable as reference material for my new work. Mai's pupils trembled violently, and her fingers gripping the gun tightened. Just as she was about to shoot this Tokyo scum who spouts nonsense, the stone road of the entire Kyoto Jujutsu High seemed to tremble slightly. Boom. A grade 2 cursed spirit was slapped against the wall like a fly by a giant fleshy palm, and blood splattered on the old red bricks. And that shirtless giant with muscles bulging like rocks didn't even turn his head. Aoi Toto. He was holding a limited edition Takata-chan Walkman, with cheerful idle music leaking from the headphones. This extreme contrast made the air freeze instantly. Mai restrained her hostility and stepped back with some trepidation. And Aoi Toto turned his head, his scarred eyes locking onto Mizuki Makoto's face. He didn't look at the letter of recommendation, nor did he pay attention to my identity, just spoke slowly with a seriousness akin to a religious trial. Hey, you from Tokyo. Before introducing yourself, I have a question to ask you. The answer to this question will determine whether I beat you half to death. The surrounding wind seemed to have stopped. What type of woman do you like? Mai showed a pitying expression. That was the look of someone watching a dead person. Aoi Toto's soul-searching questions never cared if your answer conformed to worldly aesthetics. What he cared about was the truth of the soul. If you tried to lie or give a mediocre answer, he would not hesitate to dismantle you into parts on the spot. Mizuki Makoto was silent for 3 seconds. The pua in his brain started to overheat again. If he answered, good personality, or, I'm not picky as long as she's pretty, there was a high probability he would be punched away by his good brother Aoi Toto as an uninteresting mortal or a lying fraud. He faced Aoi Toto's oppressive gaze, slowly took out a drawing tablet and a stylus from his bag, and his tone became even more serious than Aoi Toto's. Toto-kun, regarding this question, I think we must first clarify a baseline. Mizuki Makoto pushed up his glasses, a sharp cold light flashing across his lenses. Although generally speaking, my preference is for women with a height of around 170 centimeters, a waist-to-hip ratio of 0.65-0.7, and a bust-to-waist difference of 25 centimeters or more. However, from an artistic perspective, are you asking about the pure girl with a sense of transparency under the cel-shaded style? Or are you asking about the mature woman full of fleshiness and power tension under the thick painting style? Toto-kun, appearance, is just a threshold. For a man like me, Thea self-centered, soul is what truly intoxicates people. Aoi Toto's brows twitched slightly, and the muscle groups that were already primed relaxed a little. Oh. Self-centeredness. Exactly. Mizuki Makoto pushed up his glasses, a sharp cold light flashing across his lenses. What is charming is the kind of lady who wears an elegant or cold mask, essentially viewing the world as a hunting ground, living only for her own credo. She doesn't need the understanding of others, because the extreme, highly aggressive self, in her is the ultimate romances. He paused, and the stylus drew a sharp arc on the screen. Even if she is just standing there, you will feel a dangerous and charming romantical tension that tries to break through some kind of shackle. This arrogance, this strength, yet the mystery that makes one want to peel off her disguise and mask, that is the ultimate art I want to draw into my doujinshi. The air was dead silent for a full 5 seconds. In fact, Mizuki Makoto's impassioned preference manifesto was entirely based on Mei, that black-hearted beauty who only had bank balances in her eyes and whose every breath exuded elegance and coldness. However, Zenin Mai, who was standing on the side, had an extremely colorful expression. Mai froze in place, the knuckles of her hand holding the gun turning slightly white. Extreme self, wearing a cold mask, living only for her own credo, tension of breaking through some kind of shackle. These words spun crazily in her mind, and what they finally pieced together was actually Maki, who had resolutely left the Zenin family to prove herself rebellious and strong. And at the same time, the self deep in her heart, which had learned to arm itself with elegance and sarcasm since childhood but actually just wanted to slack off in this disgusting family, seemed to be subtly touched by these words. This guy, is he looking at Maki through me? Or, did he see through more? Mai bit her lower lip, staring fiercely at Mizuki Makoto, a twisted emotion called embarrassment and anger added to the original murderous intent, and even her ears were slightly red. Pervert. Where are you looking? Just as Mai was about to explode, a huge shadow enveloped Mizuki Makoto. Aoi Todo took a sudden step forward, and that large hand capable of crushing the skull of a cursed spirit slapped heavily on his shoulder, with enough force to almost make Mizuki Makoto pass away on the spot. He ignored Mai's shame and anger, but his pupils vibrated violently, his tone carrying a terrifying fanaticism. This analysis that hits the essence of the soul. This aesthetic intuition that can strip arrogance and obsession into art. Could you be my brother, that I have been searching for many years, lost on the streets of Tokyo? Todo, your 530,000 IQ is starting to render non-existent memories, again. But Mizuki Makoto didn't flinch, instead stepped forward, and backhanded a pat on the draft of Gojo Mai in his bag, which was enough to make Gojo Satoru hit him with an unlimited void. In that instant, the limitless aura radiating from his whole body faintly revealed a kind of martyr's madness. Who do you think I am, Aoi Todo? I am the man who drew the Gojo Mai series with the resolve of being publicly browsed by that white-haired guy in front of the Jujutsu High cafeteria. Mai's revolver fell to the ground with a clatter. Her look at Mizuki Makoto was no longer looking at a madman, but at a freak who had crossed the line of life and death and was completely broken. And Aoi Todo, after being stunned for 2 seconds, burst into a fit of wild laughter that could blow off the roof of the teaching building. Daring to challenge that alter named Gojo Satoru. This courage to challenge the strongest. This innocence of never lying about one's preferences. He suddenly hugged Mizuki Makoto's neck, that massive cursed energy instantly turning into the heat of having found a soulmate. Brother. You really are my brother from another mother. Aoi Todo laughed while dragging him into the school with an extremely hardcore but irresistible force. Let's go to my room. Since you have the guts to draw even Gojo Satoru into a doujinshi, then you must also understand the sacredness of Takata-chan that transcends dimensions. We will talk about everything from the mechanical aesthetics of the skeleton, to the reshaping of the soul. The moment he was dragged away, Mizuki Makoto looked back at Zenin Mai, whose worldview was completely shattered, and let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. Aoi Todo's dormitory was unexpectedly tidy. Aside from the giant posters of the idol Takata-chan plastered all over the walls, enough to induce aesthetic fatigue, the place looked like the meditation room of an ascetic monk. Mizuki Makoto sat on a chair that was excessively large, his heart beating at an alarmingly fast frequency, even more exaggerated than when Zenin Mai had pointed a gun at his head just moments ago. There is no help for it. Who told that white-haired teacher back home to already read the first draft of Gojo Mai? At the mere thought of that gentle smile Satoru Gojo had worn when he took off his blindfold in the training ground, a smile capable of instantly freezing the air, Mizuki Makoto felt a chill down his spine. Running away to Kyoto overnight this time wasn't just for physical refuge, it was to scrape together a trump card for self-preservation before Satoru Gojo could drag him back for execution. Hey, brother. You've been staring at my shoulder since just now. Could it be? Aoi Todo asked without turning his head, while meticulously wiping his limited edition CD, have you finally discovered the holy light hidden within my muscles? No, I was just observing your wild movements. Mizuki Makoto took a deep breath, adjusted his glasses, and decided to gamble using his intuition as an artist. Although I know the truth is a transmigrator, at this moment, I absolutely cannot break character. Aoi Todo, this way of exerting force, full of violent beauty, is definitely not something those conservative old fogies at Kyoto Jujutsu High could teach. That style, it carries an unbridled aura of the wilderness. Mizuki Makoto paused, his lenses flashing with a sharp, cold light under the illumination. I once heard teacher Gojo mention by chance that before that white-haired man became the strongest, the only woman who held the name of special grade was Yuki Tsukumo. Although he complained that she was just a crazy woman who refused to follow orders, the moment I saw that punch of yours, that was the name that appeared in my mind. That heaviness, that seemed capable of smashing the entire world. You are her child or disciple, right? Click. Aoi Todo's hand, which had been wiping the CD, froze abruptly. You mean, heaviness. He turned around slowly, those eyes marked with hideous scars locking onto Mizuki Makoto's gaze. In that instant, Mizuki Makoto felt as if he were facing an ancient mammoth about to rampage. That's right, it's an extremely domineering sense of presence. Mizuki Makoto began to frantically pile up metaphysical profiling in that direction. In my intuition, the person who could teach you this style must be a wanderer unbound by rules. Riding heavy motorcycles, facing the raging wind head-on, burning with a madness that would smash the whole world, and those moldy rules, into powder. After all, only such a soul could make a man like you bow your head, right? Mizuki Makoto had never actually met Yuki Tsukumo, he was just describing a texture. He was gambling, betting that a man like Aoi Todo, who was extremely emotional and revered, true souls, would fill in the rest of the puzzle himself. The air remained deathly silent for a full 3 seconds. To be able to profile the aura left behind by that person, just through naked eye observation. Aoi Todo muttered, his gaze shifting from suspicion to a terrifying heat. Even the rambling of that man, Satoru Gojo, could be stripped down to the truth by you. He clenched his fist slightly, his tone carrying an unprecedented level of approval. You're right, she is my mentor. Although she left the decadent Japan long ago, the wealth she left me is indeed right here. Before Mizuki Makoto could heave a sigh of relief, a huge shadow suddenly enveloped him. Aoi Todo took a sudden step forward, and that large hand, capable of crushing the skull of a cursed spirit, pressed heavily onto Mizuki Makoto's shoulder. This insight that looks directly into the essence of the soul through the skin. Mizuki Makoto. You truly possess the most top-tier soul in this world. But immediately following that, Aoi Todo's brows furrowed, and his eyes revealed a displeased scrutiny. However, brother, your body is too light. As light as a piece of waste paper drifting in the wind. My best friend must not only have a noble aesthetic but also the capacity to carry this aesthetic. 5 minutes later, at the Kyoto Jujutsu High-Back Mountain Training Ground. Come on, brother. If you cannot resonate with me in a physical sense, then everything you said just now is merely cheap empty talk. Aoi Todo let out a low roar like muffled thunder. He was shirtless, and his cursed energy rose like boiling steam. Mizuki Makoto stood opposite him, his calves cramping. I'm dead. I'm really going to die. I miscalculated one thing. Aoi Todo's brotherhood is not only toxic, but it also deals physical damage. Aoi Todo. I really am just an artist, the kind of fragile artist who would fall over in a gust of wind. But you are even more of a jujutsu sorcerer. The ground under Aoi Todo's feet cracked instantly. He charged over like a toppling mountain, bringing with him an overwhelming pressure. In this life or death moment where that punch could turn someone into a QR code, the echo mimicry in Mizuki Makoto's brain activated overclocked simulation. At this distance, at this speed, unless he used limitless, conventional evasion was already declared invalid. Aoi Todo's attack range covered all blind spots. Since he couldn't dodge, he could only use the professional means of a doujin artist, forcibly edit this space. He raised his hands abruptly, imagining the space in front of him as a huge, crumpled bed sheet, and then precisely grabbed those fragmented wrinkles and pulled hard. Echo mimicry Ushora Dan. Give me, slide away. Bang. Aoi Todo's heavy punch smashed hard onto Mizuki Makoto's forearm. In that instant, Mizuki Makoto felt as if he had been hit head-on by a Shinkansen train running at full speed. Although the cursed technique forcibly shifted the point of impact, letting that punch graze past his arm, the residual shock still hammered into his internal organs like a heavy mallet. Mizuki Makoto flew out over a dozen meters like a broken ragdoll, crashing heavily into a tree trunk. Pooha! A mouthful of fresh blood sprayed directly onto the fallen leaves. Mizuki Makoto felt his internal organs churning, and his right arm had completely lost sensation. Aoi Todo did not pursue. Instead, he stood in place, staring at a point in the void with a solemn expression, then looked at his own fist that had missed its mark. As the master of Boogie Woogie, he knew better than anyone what had just happened. In that instant just now, the space was pulled. Aoi Todo muttered, a flash of brilliance appearing in his eyes due to extreme surprise. He suddenly looked up at Mizuki Makoto, his tone carrying a shock as if he had discovered a new continent. Mizuki Makoto, what you did just now wasn't defense. You forcibly interfered with the plane of this space in that instant, right? Aoi Todo's eyes changed. It was no longer the look of someone watching a weakling, but a kind of ecstasy at seeing a soul struggling with something called paranoia. Although your body is ridiculously weak, this determination to stay on the battlefield even if I die, this posture of using the paranoia of art to resist the laws of physics. Aoi Todo walked over with heavy steps. Under the gaze of the terrified Mizuki Makoto, he did not throw another punch, but instead let out a laugh loud enough to shatter leaves, grabbed Mizuki Makoto from the ground, and hugged his shoulder tightly. Good. Although you, brother, are still just a piece of scrap metal right now, this piece of scrap metal will be forged by my own hands. Mizuki Makoto, who was being hugged until he was almost suffocating, felt his vision go dark. He had only one thought in his heart. Satoru Gojo, you fool, look at what you've forced me into. To avoid your slap, I've almost had my ribs broken by a muscle man from Kyoto Jujutsu High. Normally, the first thing to do upon arriving at Kyoto Jujutsu High should be to go and pay respects to Utahime Iori. Mizuki Makoto stood before the quaint plaque inscribed with Kyoto Jujutsu High School, subconsciously touching the two life-saving talismans in his pocket. One was a recommendation letter handwritten by Ieri Shoko, and the other was a bottle of rare, limited edition local Kyoto sake that Ieri Shoko had specifically instructed him to queue up to buy. Seriously, at this moment, I genuinely want to kowtow to Ieri Shoko-san. Mizuki Makoto knew very well that if this letter had been signed by Gojo Satoru, his fate would surely have been to be kicked into the nearby Kamo River to feed the fish, bags and all, by Utahime Iori before he even set foot inside the school gates. After all, that white-haired guy's reputation with Utahime Iori had long since plummeted to negative infinity, and the identity of Gojo's direct student was, in Kyoto, a red-name debuff ready to explode at any moment. I will, of course, give Ieri Shoko face. In the office, Utahime Iori looked at the bottle of sake on her desk, her expression softening slightly. She glanced sideways at the boy before her, who looked frail but happened to have a Gojo faction face, and snorted coldly, since you are also a member of that white-haired victim alliance, then stay here with peace of mind. As long as you don't cause trouble, no one at Kyoto Jujutsu High will drive you away. At that moment, through Mizuki Makoto's filter, Utahime Iori seemed to radiate the redemptive glory of the Virgin Mary. However, the protection of the Madonna could block the wind and rain from outside the school, but it could not stop the best friend from within. The daily routine at Kyoto Jujutsu High was infuriatingly regular. At 6 in the morning, while he was still deep in an artistic exchange with Gojo Mai, gender-swapped version, in his dreams, the dormitory door would be slammed open by brute force. Wake up, brother. The morning air is filled with the fragrance of Takata-chan. Let us comprehend the weight of our souls amidst sweat. Consequently, every morning, under the gazes of other Kyoto Jujutsu High students, mainly Kamo Noritoshi and Momo Nishimiya, filled with pity, sympathy, and even a hint of good luck, won't be seeing you off, Mizuki Makoto would be grabbed by Aoi Todo like a chick and dragged to the back mountain. The good news, he had temporarily escaped the one-sided slaughter of Gojo Satoru, which had no interactivity and constantly threatened to atomize people. The bad news, although Aoi Todo's fists were not as unreasonable as Gojo Satoru's, they could definitely be called a physics miracle. Wrong. Brother, that sidestep of yours just now was too stiff. You have to imagine space as a thin cicada wing, you have to glide along its texture. Bang! Mizuki Makoto was sent flying by Aoi Todo again like a broken sack. Although he used his cursed technique to dissipate most of the force, the feeling of impact, like being grazed head-on by a heavy tank, still kept his fragile artistic life constantly on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, Kyoto Jujutsu High was not entirely filled with humanoid walking weapons like Aoi Todo. Mizuki-kun, are you okay? This is some bruise medicine I just picked up from the infirmary. Miwa Kasumi, you are an angel. In Mizuki Makoto's eyes, Miwa Kasumi was simply an angel who had descended to the mortal world. Whenever he lay paralyzed on the training ground gasping for air like a dead dog, Miwa Kasumi would always appear on time with a healing smile and red bean soup at the perfect temperature. Although she was a loyal fan of Gojo Satoru, her character was so good that Mizuki Makoto couldn't even bear to tell her, "Your idol is actually a pervert who steals his own female students' skirts to wear." Another frequent visitor was Zenin Mai. It must be said that compared to Maki Zenin, who would use physical chokeholds and attempt to dismantle Mizuki Makoto's ribs at the drop of a hat, Zenin Mai was, to some extent, simply as gentle as a big sister next door, of course, provided you ignore her venomous tongue that could quench poison. You can't get up from just this much. Has the taste of Tokyo Jujutsu High fallen to the point of recruiting such waste paper models? Zenin Mai would sneer while casually tossing him a can of ice-cold cola. Mizuki Makoto discovered that many actions that would get him sent away on the spot if done to Maki Zenin, such as observing her eyelashes up close, muttering in her ear, or suddenly commenting on the details of her outfit for the day, would at most earn him an elegant eye roll from Zenin Mai, or a non-cursed energy-infused slap. As expected, Tsunere is an inexhaustible material library for an artist. Although life in refuge was comfortable, one absolutely cannot live without money. The wear and tear of art supplies, the upgrading of digital tablets, and the expenses of buying daifuku for Miwa Kasumi is a thank you fee. Wallet-kun soon made a shameful sound. Dame Daizu, Hantu ni Ippon Monai. Once again, thanks to that letter from Ieri Shoko. Because he held the dual titles of Shoko's friend and Kyoto Jujutsu High temporary exchange student, Utahime Iori took extra care of him, not only waiving his meal fees but also allowing him to take on some low-grade missions as an exchange student to earn commissions. Missions were usually conducted in teams. The most common configuration was Aoi Todo, violent demolition, Zenin Mai, responsible for being teased by Mizuki Makoto until she pulled her gun, and Mizuki Makoto. His role was very clear, responsible for persecuting Zenin Mai. No, responsible for using Ushora-dan in the back row to block stray bullets, while incidentally simulating Aoi Todo's wild cursed energy flow in his mind to accumulate inspiration for his special grade observation diary. Occasionally, when the ultimate worker Mekamaru was offline for maintenance, Mizuki Makoto would also team up with Miwa Kasumi. At those times, the mission felt more like a Gojo Satoru fan offline meetup. Mizuki-kun, I heard you're the only person besides Gojo-sensei who can use Limitless. You must have seen it, right? That move where it goes, whoosh, and sucks space in. Miwa Kasumi gripped her small fists, her eyes sparkling with fanatical star-chasing light. Mizuki Makoto looked at those expectant eyes and sighed helplessly. Although his output was far from the near-infinite scale of Gojo Satoru, as a jujutsu sorcerer who already possessed semi-grade 1 strength, it was more than enough to display a bit of the spirit, with lethality. Just then, a grade 2 cursed spirit that volunteered to sacrifice itself for art, roared and charged over. Watch closely, Miwa Kasumi. This is the Makoto-kun limited edition. Mizuki Makoto extended his finger and hooked it into the void. His cursed technique Limitless instantly captured the gravity in space. Limitless. Blue. In an instant, the space at the core of the cursed spirit collapsed violently. The terrifying gravity, like an invisible black hole, instantly twisted that massive body into a lump of distorted meat, which then completely annihilated in the void. Wah! It's blue. Although the scale is a bit small, that cold, ruthless sense of purification is exactly the same. Miwa Kasumi jumped up on the spot in excitement. Then, what about that red one? Mizuki Makoto smiled slightly, brought his fingertips together again, and reversed the flow of his cursed energy. Limitless. Red. A dazzling red light whistled out, instantly blowing away the remaining cursed spirit debris along with several large trees in the distance that were as thick as a person could embrace. Although he could kill a weaker special grade if he risked burning himself out, using it to insta-kill a grade 2 cursed spirit was like using a cannon to shoot a mosquito. But looking at Miwa Kasumi's pure and brilliant smile of admiration, Mizuki Makoto suddenly felt that being a stunt porter for Gojo Satoru didn't seem so bad. In the evening, Mizuki Makoto sat on the roof of the dormitory building, feeling the cool evening breeze of Kyoto. Although he had to be tortured by Aoi Todo until his bones rattled every day, and although Zenonmai's venomous tongue was still piercing, this life where he didn't have to worry about Gojo Satoru teleporting in front of him at any moment to punch him away and elbow drop his face into the ground really made him want to linger. Let me stay a little longer, even one more day would be good. Mizuki Makoto unwrapped a new paintbrush and began sketching the ancient eaves of Kyoto Jujutsu high under the setting sun. As long as Gojo-sensei doesn't discover that I'm actually here on a paid vacation, my artistic bacteria can continue to burn, probably. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.